Okay, we're good to go. We're live. Welcome to the Theologian's Table podcast. I am one of the co-hosts. My name is Tim T. And with me is...
Tim J. I was waiting for my cue.
There you go. He's the other co-host of the show.
Did you do a test?
I did do a test.
Sorry.
We did a test. Yep.
Right. Sometimes some of the raw conversation sounds good.
Uh-huh.
I was going to ask you if you did a test before you hit record, and I was like, I'll just do it
now. So we're back. It's probably, for you guys, will have been a month since the last recording.
Is that true?
Yeah. It goes by quick, man.
Oh, wow. I knew we were slacking a little bit.
At the very least, 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But,
yeah.
So I don't know why. They probably listen, Tim's a business owner and I'm a teacher. Mm-hmm. We have multiple kids. We'll say it as many times as we need to. Life just, we don't have a scheduled, we don't have a schedule for this. So,
and I will say this too. I don't know if this is true of you, but sometimes the last podcast we record it, and then you release it, and then I listen back to it, and if I feel like we landed at a good spot, I don't think about it for a little bit. Mm-hmm. But then I read the word, and then I'll listen to certain things. I'll listen to certain teachers, certain preachers, and if something comes up in me, then I'll be like, "What do you think if we talked about this?" Or you do the same thing. What do you think if we talk about this? And that's how it comes up. So apparently we just haven't needed to talk about anything for the past 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. But listening back over the previous one and thinking about it, and then seeing a lot of things in the culture has kind of led us back here again.
Yeah. Meme making.
Yes. Before we get into anything, is there anything you want to say?
No. Well, I mean, there's lots of things I could say. Right now, just an update on my own life. I've am starting revisions on my manuscript on the fruit of the Holy Spirit. I feel like such a tool whenever I bring that up. You know that?
No, don't though.
But it's my self-deprecating nature, I guess.
No, I get it. And anytime I tell anyone, "Oh, I have a podcast," I do it with like, "Do I do this? Do I say it?
Right?
Do I say it?"
That's why.
All right, fine. Yeah, I have a podcast actually, do, and I'm like, it didn't help. I still feel so schmucky.
That's why. So making memes about that used to help me quite a bit.
Oh,
just making fun of having a podcast.
Yeah.
So. But, we need an outlet, and podcasting is our outlet.
For sure. Yeah. So
why feel bad about that?
Yeah. And I spoke to someone recently, and we were talking about the podcast and talking about, it was really good. I had a really great conversation. And, it was my brother-in-law, and I talked to him hung out for like hours. We went to this place in Battery Park in Atlanta.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
Dude, I had no idea that place was. I thought it was just a stadium where the Braves play, and apparently it's like the stadium and then a whole like community there.
Yes,
It's like all these cool businesses. It's all like open, so you can come like look into the stadium too, and it blew me away. I did not know any of that was there.
Yeah,
I was reading the directions for where it was, and it was a Rocky Patel cigar bar, and so we were like, yeah, let's go hang out. Yep. And it was leading us, it's in Marietta. And so we're like heading toward Atlanta. And as we turned off, I was like, you led us to Marietta. What are you doing? You didn't type in the right address. And then it was like, yeah, turn on this. And sadly, the Braves were playing the Phillies. So everyone and their mom was there that night.
Yeah.
So we drove around. Anyway, long story short, it was fun. It was a cool place. But we talked for like hours, and I remember asking him, I was like, are you interested in podcasting? And he was like, yes, I have so much I want to say and get off my chest. And I was like, right, me too. And that's why I'm doing this. And this is just one thing that I want to do. There's other things I want to talk about too. But
Is he good with sound equipment?
No.
Oh,
I can say it's in Chandler. No,
okay.
that one's Cam.
Okay.
And he did have a podcast, yes.
All right. Because then, let's add another person, but we need better sound stuff.
Yeah, well, we can talk to Cam in order to get Chan. That's something we can do.
All right.
But yeah.
So you went to a cigar bar.
Mm-hmm.
You're going out of town this week, right?
Yeah, North Carolina.
North Carolina. What are you doing there?
To all the big Andy Griffith fans out there, and I know there's tons. We're going on a vacation with my wife's family just for like a couple days up where Andy Griffith was born.
Okay. And
so it's where he like all the town names. If you watch enough Andy Griffith, you hear names like Mount Pilot and Mount Airy and stuff like that. So it's in Mount Airy. But so he kind of based the idea of the town of Mayberry off of his hometown.
Okay.
And so since it was been such a sensation, they turned Mount Airy into like a very Mayberry sort of place. And so on Thursday they have Mayberry Days, and like there's all these restaurants like with towns. And if you've never seen Andy Griffith, none of this will mean anything. But like there's a restaurant called like The Loaded Goat, which is an episode. And then there's Floyd's Barbershop because Floyd was the barber, and tons of names like that. So it's like, so we're going to go there and camp for a couple days and check out Mayberry Days. So just a short trip.
That sounds like fun, though.
Yeah. I love camping.
Yeah, camping. My wife will probably tease me when she hears this, but I do like camping. So and we've never. What's weird is we've never taken the family, so.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot, especially when you have little ones.
Yeah.
The older ones, they're okay, but.
So are you camping, or are you getting like a cabin?
No, we're camping.
That's good, with tents and everything.
Yeah, I just bought a tent last night. And, yeah, but I mean, my in-laws have an RV, so they'll be an escape if necessary, but.
A bathroom?
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, there'll be a bathroom there, but I love camping, man. It's so much fun. I try to do it a few times a year. Got used to sleeping in a hammock and building the fires and cooking. It's great, man.
It is, yeah. I love cooking on the campfire.
Yeah, and I was going to say you talked about how you hate bugs so much.
I do, but
there's so many bugs out here.
I know, like I have to wear a bug spray anytime I go out, like especially at night. But the best place I went camping and hiking was the Black Hills of South Dakota.
Oh, no kidding.
Like there's virtually zero bugs, unless they're crawling on the ground, but because it's all cedar pine and most of it anyways. And so all like the flying insects like to stay away from the cedar. So,
really? I didn't know that. Okay.
I never had any issues there with bugs, but I mean, it's just a beautiful place in general.
It is. And that's the thing. I've been to South Dakota. I don't know where the Black Hills, is that the southern part of South Dakota?
Yeah. So if you're getting close to, what is it, Montana? Because it goes Black Hills, then Badlands.
Okay.
And then I think it hits Montana. It's on the border. It's close to the border.
Okay.
Pretty sure. So yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, when I went there, we were in Nebraska, and so I went to sleep in Oklahoma, and when I woke up, we were in Nebraska, and I got up and like looked out the window, and I was like, "This is not Nebraska," because Nebraska is like corn, everywhere, it's like Illinois, miles of corn, and when I woke up, I was like, "This is beautiful country." And then I saw on the map where we were like right on the border of South Dakota.
Right, yeah.
And so we crossed over, but someone invited us for lunch, so we had to go back. But I was so wanting to see Mount Rushmore because we were that close.
Oh, yeah.
And, but I was like, this is not Nebraska. And then I realized, like, oh, it's essentially South Dakota. And it was gorgeous, man. Wide open spaces.
Yep.
It's so pretty.
Yeah, I miss it. I think about it often. I did not do well on the climb up the mountain there. Mount Harney is the tallest mountain in South Dakota. It's right there in the Black Hills. But even though it was hard, it was still just like super beautiful
Yeah.
all the way up.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm it's something that I want to really get into, and that's do more camping and do more hiking specifically. Yeah. And this really is such a beautiful area. We're at the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, and I'm a part of a couple hiking Georgia groups on Facebook.
Yep.
And I see all these different places, and the amazing thing is, it's like every waterfall, every unbelievable thing, they'll say this is where we are, and I'm like, that's like not even an hour from where I'm at.
Right.
I'm
yeah.
Like,
I
oh
know.
my gosh, this is. I'm used to being in Illinois and then Oklahoma. You're landlocked, and then not just landlocked. It's just that there's not mountains. There's not like tons of really great trails, and some of the best views are like 45 minutes from here.
Right.
30 minutes, 20, even Jasper.
Yeah.
A little north of here is beautiful. And so I'm just like, okay, I don't want to leave a place without doing everything that I wanted to do there, you know.
Right.
That's something I don't want to do. It's like living in Memphis but never eating barbecue. And then and then
would
leaving.
Be a sin.
Yeah, so it's like I want to do everything Georgia has to offer, you know?
Yeah. And I want to get up to, I think it's Rabun County. They have that's right in the Blue Ridge Mountains.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So they have, from what I've seen, awesome trails that I've been like really eager to check out myself. So
yeah.
But do you want to? Should we get into the?
Yeah, let's probably get into it.
So
I can talk Blue Ridge Mountains all day.
Right. Yeah. This is so last time we got together, we talked about the culture wars, and I think we're still gonna verge in on that territory, but Tim is gonna just I guess introduce what's on his heart tonight. So
yeah, so the last episode it did tie into culture wars, but it was more about like therapy. Right. And
we spent so long on therapy. I didn't realize it until I listened to it.
And then a little bit on what was the thing about the academy and the pastoral?
Yeah, how there's like a separation between unnecessary, in my opinion. But
yeah.
But
it wasn't. It was. I think it was good. It was a really good conversation. I loved it. I loved listening to it. And I think it's funny how I often say I don't have strong opinions on this, and then I totally do.
Yeah.
But what I guess what I mean when I say that is that I feel strongly about this, but I haven't heard enough evidence from the other side.
Okay.
So if you were to present a lot of convincing evidence, I would at least take that in, you know, and I would think about it some more and try to line it up with the word in my worldview.
Yeah.
But I'm at least open. But sometimes you have heard enough of something.
Yes.
Where it's like, I don't need to hear another opinion about, you know, whatever, like a painfully obvious thing. Be like, well, you know, you got to hear both sides. It's like, I've heard both sides and now I know exactly why I disagree with you, you know? And so there I'm closed-minded at that point.
That's hard. Okay. That's hard for people to understand because everybody wants you to agree with them. And that's, you know, the culture's made that crystal clear.
Yeah.
You agree with them or you're out of here.
Or else.
And so I think we talked on a phone call earlier about how the most cynical part of me thinks that's funny when something doesn't go somebody's way. Well, it's funny to me when, you know, people are like giving every intellectual argument that they can for you to believe what they believe, and you're still like, no, thank you.
Yeah, no.
You're like, oh,
yeah, don't see it that way. I'm trying to find this. I'm trying to find this meme that kind of illustrates this point. I hate to paraphrase it, but I don't want to waste time. Yeah, it's basically a person standing at like the entrance of a community, and he's about to walk in, and it says this is a very tolerant place, but if you don't Yeah, I'm gonna have to paraphrase it because I can't find it.
Okay.
But if you don't agree with what we agree with and say with what we say, then you're out of here. You're excluded. And it's like that's how I feel about like our culture. That it's like you're the same people who say like be tolerant, be open minded, and free your mind, open your mind, man, are so intolerant and exclude people all the time and are cold and their mind are so closed. I remember hearing, you remember the situation in Ferguson with Michael Brown?
Yeah.
There was a college, I can't remember which one, but I think it was like a pretty decent college, or maybe it was a high school. But the students who were a part of a debate team, one side of the room, completely indiscriminately said, the teacher said, you're going to have to represent Michael Brown in this case. And the other side is going to have to represent the other side of this situation in Ferguson. And the other people who were asked to represent the other side said no.
Uh-huh.
It's like, tell your teacher no. What
Yeah.
are you there to do?
Yeah.
And it was fascinating to me that like you can't even begin to see the other side of something. That's how convinced you are of an argument that you've never dissected.
Mm-hmm.
That is ridiculous. And that's kind of what I see. I see people like losing their minds in our culture. And I'm like, but you have to be able to see the other side, but not the straw man argument of the other side. Mm-hmm. There needs to be some sort of intellectual honesty, you know? Yeah. But I think that the people who are honest are, you know them, you know, like people like Joe Rogan, who has said very clearly, I'm like left. I lean, what would that be? So socialist, kind of leans more towards socialism. But is really good friends with Ben Shapiro, with Jordan Peterson, with Steven Crowder. Mm-hmm. People who are very on the opposite end of things.
Yeah.
But he's always willing to listen and see their point of view.
Right.
You know, that's the first person comes to my mind. I think Sam Harris is probably one of those guys too. I'm just thinking of popular, very influential people. But by and large, you don't see people willing to have those conversations. It's like, do not, especially on the left, do not cross over to the right and talk to them because they're Nazis. And that's the thing. If you demonize somebody, it's evil to have any kind of communion with a demon.
Right.
So no, they're despicable people. We don't talk to them. We don't understand what their disgusting thoughts are, you know, and it's just like, this really is where we're at. And so it's frightening to me. In one sense, it's frightening to me because I think this is as close to a civil war as you can get without actually separating. And I think if it continues, we will see that.
Ouch. I mean,
agree?
Well, I would have before COVID, I would have joked around, or during COVID, I'm like, hey, we're gonna have a civil war, but you know, lots of things started happening that was like, well, maybe it's not so much of a joke.
Yeah.
The riots were one of them, which I can't even talk about objectively because I'm from St. Paul and Minneapolis area. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, just because, you know, the places where these peaceful protests happen that were where the fires were lit peacefully.
Yes.
It makes me mad, so I'm going to be snarky about it.
Yeah. Oh, dude. And if it doesn't make you mad, something's wrong with you, I think.
Yeah. I mean, these were the places where I grew up, and they're just, you know, trash lit on fire. Mm-hmm. And, you know, when you bring up like these were minority owned businesses, like that gets swept under the rug, or, you know, you're being, this is what butters my biscuit or burns my bacon. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the description is like. You're accused of distracting from the real issue by bringing stuff up like that. But the whole purpose of the protest was to bring attention to minorities being targeted by police, and yet you're burning down minority-owned businesses. So you're part of the problem. You're creating more of an issue,
right?
But if you brought that up, you were distracting from the issue. You don't really care or whatever, and and you're like, no, I do care, but I also care that you are reacting violently towards your neighbors.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's one small instance,
right?
And I think one of the earliest ones that I remember was Trayvon Martin.
Mm-hmm.
Is that his name?
Yeah,
that one. That was littered with all sorts of like, wait, why is that happening? Why are you doing that? Are you sure that's racism? You know,
right? Yeah,
and then it was like Michael Brown. I'll never forget where I was when I opened up the news and saw everyone standing with their hands up, don't shoot. And my very first reaction was, yeah, I don't know that you can know that. I don't know that you can know that he had his hands up and said, don't shoot. Like, I feel like everyone is just like, they love symbols. They run towards symbols, you know?
Yeah, we do.
Like, and I was just so foolish. Like, just think, you know, just calm down and think. And I was just like, this happened like a few hours at the Ferguson thing I'm referring to. This happened a few hours ago. Like, you really know everything there is to know about this issue, and now you're going to protest and burn everything? It was like 6 hours ago. You can't know everything. Have they even released the police report? And then it was like Freddie Gray, and I could go through all of these because I remember all of them. And every single time I was like, stop rushing to judgment. You don't know anything yet. And then it turns out usually afterward, after all the fires have gone out and all the innocent business owners have lost their businesses, and there's just total chaos. And it was like, oh, it turned out the cop was black, and the mayor who called in the riot squad was black, and the governor of the state. It has nothing to do with race, you know? And I was just like, well, why did everything burn then?
Yeah.
You know? But then you just kept seeing it, bam, 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 one right after the other. And it was like so maddening. I had to just take my eyes off the news for a while because it was literally stealing my peace. And I'd like wake up in the morning and feel good, and then start thinking about what's happening in our country, and then just furious, mad. And so you see enough of that, and then eventually it gets to a boiling point in 2020 where every day was a riot. Yeah. You know, if it wasn't a BLM riot, it was one from Antifa. And if it wasn't Antifa, it was Chaz Chop, which is bonkers to me. Yeah. I still can't think about it and feel like it's reality. I feel like we're talking about a Babylon Bee article.
Yeah, that's what it was. That's what it seemed like.
Especially since it was like it used to be Chaz, and they had to change it to Chop because they still wanted to get their welfare checks. It's like, this would be hysterical if it wasn't disgusting. You know? And I was like, we're going to grow our own crops. And they tried to do it on like pavement or like on cardboard. Like literally trying to grow crops on a piece of cardboard with dirt on it.
I don't think I knew that.
Like, and then they had like bags of Sprite. I don't know why they had bags of Sprite.
Bags of Sprite.
It was a trip, and I was just like, "This is insane." And then the 2020 election happened, and then January 6th, and oh my gosh, it was just like, okay, I'm about to lose my mind right now. My son was born the day after January 6th, so we had totally disconnected from news. And so nurses would come in and be like, "How is everything good? You're following the news?" And we're like, "Nope, no, we're not watching the news." And then they'd continue to tell us the news, and I was like, "No, we're not watching the news,
right? On purpose."
Yeah, like I don't care about any of this. And then so coming out of that just made me be like, I think it's time to disconnect for a bit, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway,
yeah. So one of the things that I tried to initiate several years ago was to try and not instantly react to any news that I didn't like, because I didn't think that. I just think I wanted to wait until all the info possible was in, so then I can make a decision. And I feel like, or I believe that really helped me sort of discern the truth from fiction,
right? As
far as what happened in these big controversial events. Like, however, I sometimes fail and you know, make a meme out of it. So, and then well, I mean, yes, I get passive aggressive about it and post something. But
I do too. I'm guilty of that too, man.
But it's the point is it's few and far between those instances, and it's shocking to me how many people like jump on the bandwagon right away, and all they know, it's like they know that the whole truth and nothing but the truth like 7 minutes after the thing happened that everybody saw on Twitter. So and that's made everybody impatient, I think.
Oh yeah, and you talked about that before, about the idea of just patience.
Yeah,
how the people of God really need to be patient.
Yes,
and here's the thing: it's hard to pitch conservatism to young people who want a cause, who want change now. And if they see injustice, I want it corrected now.
Right.
And it's hard to, or like, hey, I went to college for years and now I have all this debt and now I'm a barista at Starbucks. This is wrong. I want to get out of debt now. I want the government to forgive this now. And like forget these old conservative ways about saving and not making dumb decisions and financially. And like, it's hard to pitch that to kids, you know, but I heard Frank Sinatra actually said, the older you get, the more conservative you get, you know, because he was certainly liberal, but he voted for Reagan eventually.
Right.
Yeah. So it's something that you see that you start to kind of, well, allegedly, you should start to slow down and recognize that the here and the now is not as good as delayed gratification, you know,
right.
In terms of money, in terms of everything, you know, you don't think clearly when you're a kid and you just want a cause. And I think that the church should give these people a cause. But maybe we're not doing a good enough job. I'm just spitballing here, but maybe we're not doing a good enough job of marketing what that cause is, because there's plenty of causes out in the world today. You know, you want to talk to someone who's young and adventurous and say, you know, the person that what's his name, Robbie Dawkins. He's when all the stuff in Afghanistan happened, I kind of partnered with him for a time, and so I still follow him and still listen to his stuff, but he's someone who's like, everything he's doing is secretive. He can't talk about what he's doing most of the time, you know? And I've heard this with a lot of people, or like a bigger name, like Terry Law. I don't know if you know who that is, but anytime there is, or Samaritan's Purse, we talked about them before, but anytime there's like chaos in the world, like was it Iran? What was Syria? When the leader of Syria, they had their civil war and it was disgusting. What was that guy's name?
I forget. I know I can see his face, but I don't remember his name. Yeah, he's still there. So
but there was that one Syrian city that was under siege, and it was terrible. See, I could rattle this off like crazy 5 years ago, but I can't remember it now. Whoever's listening is probably going crazy right now.
Maybe who's this guy?
Oh, the only thing that's coming up in my head is Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, but that's Iran. And,
right.
Anyway,
I could look it up right now.
It'll come to me. Anyway, when that was happening, Terry Law was on the outskirts of Syria because it was so dangerous he couldn't get into Syria. So he was sending messengers in and saying, if you can get out of here, we will help you. And so that's a picture of the church. And I'm not even going to sit here and say the church needs to be doing this.
Right.
They are doing it. But like a lot of times you don't know about it because there's either no marketing, people cover it. It's not real sexy. It's not like, as stupid as this sounds, you know what I hear about all the time? All this recycling stuff. Recycle your water bottles. Here's my cause. Like, save a dog. I'm tired of seeing all the we save abused dogs.
Oh, the rescue dogs.
Yes.
Don't say, I mean.
I'm sorry. I love dogs.
We know people who mutually that rescue dogs.
And my brother's dating someone right now who's like super into it. Okay. But like, I also think that you can love dogs and be a part of rescuing dogs and have things way out of balance. You know?
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I was noticing this one time. This was what, did you find his name?
It's Bashar al-Assad.
Yes, gotcha. Bashar al-Assad. Yeah. People will call him like Bashar sometimes. What was the city?
Probably Aleppo, if I had to guess. Let me close
Aleppo?
the thing.
Is that right? I feel like it would pop at me if I heard it. I'm saying the listeners, the ones I bet my brothers are freaking out on me.
What did he bomb? He bombed
But there's one specific that was rough, man. It was getting bombed all the time. But Samaritan's Purse was there. You want to give these young people a cause. These are the causes, man. You know, there's no shortage of suffering and pain and the need for the kingdom to be brought in the world, in Africa, you know, in the Middle East, in Eastern Europe.
But so Damascus, was it Damascus?
That's not the one.
No,
maybe it was Aleppo. Maybe that's it. I can't.
But you know who I heard this from is Jane Goodall.
Oh, really?
She is, as far as I know, I believe she is a Christian.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But you can do things locally,
mm-hmm.
and that kind of goes back to my rant on like the mega church stuff, where everybody is trying to be the next mega church, and you know, you want to be nationally and internationally recognized. Mm-hmm. But the best thing that you can do is act locally. Yes. Your local community needs way more help than you realize.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, if you want a cause, you want to make a difference, look around you.
Absolutely. And I remember hearing this too from Andy Stanley. He was saying that he was talking about being involved in something, and, mm-hmm. and he was saying what about what is happening, what injustice is happening that you see that really gets your heart beating? What is it that makes you cry? You know?
Okay, yeah.
And what sort of injustice makes your blood boil? Mm-hmm. What has God spoken to you? Write it down, get a clear vision of what you want to do. Because here's the thing, there's so many things that can not only frustrate you, but there's so many different ministries that you can be involved in.
Yeah.
Okay. But my heart won't be in everything.
Right.
My heart might not be to go overseas, even though I want to travel and I want to go overseas and build homes. And you don't want me building homes. I want to help. I want to hand the tools to someone who's a builder.
Yeah.
I'll mow their yard. There we go.
Yeah.
But like, I do have a desire to do that, but dude, I have a hard time thinking of being a missionary because that's not my calling. But
exactly,
there are specific things to you. So you have to figure out what is it. And then I love that he ended it this way. He said, write it down and then Google what ministries are doing this, because you are not an island by yourself. Whatever God's spoken to you, he's spoken to somebody else, and there's already a thing happening there.
Yes,
you know, you don't have to reinvent the wheel here.
Right.
Like you want to do outreach in food. Uh-huh. There's food banks everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, in Tulsa, there was John 3:16 mission, which is not only like they do food, but they really evangelized the homeless. Mm-hmm. And it was, before I left, the homeless in Tulsa was crazy. It was everywhere, man. Homelessness was really starting to take over Tulsa. Yeah, it was
interesting.
Rough. Yeah,
I would have never have figured Tulsa to be. I don't know anything about Tulsa, so.
Well, I mean, it does. I think there's kind of a progressive mayor in there now. Yeah, so there's so much. There's so many things happening in every community, even in like small communities in the middle of nowhere. There's still a church food bank. It may be a closet, mm-hmm. but there's something. And like, this is true of everyone. God has made everyone to do something, you know, to be a part of the body. So some are called to be missionaries or to be even like, I hate to call them local missionaries because that sounds like such an American term, but like to work in outreach. But and then you may have a heart for prison ministry. You may have a heart for teaching, or even like I bring up Victory almost in every one of these conversations back in Tulsa, but they had a dental clinic.
Okay.
That they offered. So it was like the person who started it obviously was a dentist, but in the dentist community, other people wanted to help. And they said, hey, one time a month, you just do some free dental work. That's it. And they did that. And so I think that's amazing. Mm-hmm. Or if you're an auto mechanic,
right?
You know, anything you do can be a ministry. Mm-hmm. And I'm such a big believer in the local. So that's so important to get young people on a cause, though.
Yeah.
And I wonder if some of the giant activism spike that we're seeing is people who are young, full of energy. They want a cause. They see injustice, and that's the only outlet they see. And it's like, maybe the church needs to do a better job of marketing this, you know? And you know.
Yeah. So let me play devil's advocate here with the church marketing stuff. Is like, when you're a pastor, everybody wants you to be doing this or that.
Yes.
But you don't have the hands to do it.
Yeah.
And just because somebody wants to do it, that doesn't mean that person is going to be the best person to lead that ministry, because they have like zero experience. I mean, you can make a case for you have to work with what you have, but at the same time, you need responsible people in there. And so like everybody who wants to start a ministry within their church has the right heart. It's just that implementing it is not as easy.
Oh, for sure.
From like an administrative position. It's not as easy as we think.
Right.
So,
but I think that's my point, though,
right.
is that when we talk about ministry, the biblical, maybe Ephesians, I can't remember now, the biblical definition for ministries is the equipping of the saints for the work of the ministry. Who's doing ministry? The people.
Yeah.
Not the laity, the body. That's who's doing the ministry, and the pastors equip them. So you're absolutely right. It's not really the pastor's job to be in charge of everything all the time. But I would also answer it, well, probably two different ways. One way I would say, kind of going back to the reinventing the wheel thing, if there was more unity in the church, if the pastors would reach out a little bit more, and like I'm spitballing, I don't know of any specific lack of unity that I'm seeing that I can point to. I'm just saying I don't really see a whole lot of church unity in a lot of communities. So if one church is like really big into prison ministry, like this is our thing. If the other churches who maybe there's people in the congregation who are coming up to the pastor and saying, hey, we want to serve. Let's start this prison ministry. That pastor may say, you can start it, but it's going to take a lot. Or you can join with them because they're our fellow believers. But a lot of times it's like the thought of sending one of your congregants to that church to serve, it's scary because it's like they're not coming back.
Right, yeah.
But that doesn't have to be the case. That certainly shouldn't be the case.
That's a good point. And we've forgotten that, I think, especially in the United States, with as corporate as we can. And I'm not talking about togetherness. I'm talking about like a corporate company.
Yeah.
We forgot that the church it's in the mission of sending people out. So if there's a possibility that congregant joins that church because of that ministry, fine.
That's probably for the best.
It probably is. And, now now that person is doing what God called them to do.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't, as a pastor, you have one less congregant, but if you're equipping them, sending them out, that should make you feel good.
Right. Because they're fulfilling their purpose.
Yes.
And that's huge. And that's got to be your purpose. It's not to, but that also has to go back to what you consider success in ministry to be. If you consider success in ministry as how many people go to your church, that's not success.
Correct.
Success is like, are we bringing people in our community into the church to be born again, and or are they growing up?
Yeah.
Are we discipling them? Do they know way more about God? And that's the whole point. I keep going back to this, apparently. This past month has just been so hard on my mind. What is like the purpose of life and salvation? It's to know God.
Yeah.
This is what Jesus said. He said, I've come to, no, not that one. What is it? Eternal life. He defines eternal life for everyone. And he says, this is eternal life, that they may know him who sent me. And it almost seems like so simple that he didn't mean it, but he totally did, because eternal life does not mean living forever. People go to hell are going to live forever. That's not the point, So it's like,
that's a good point.
At least I think. I mean, that's my interpretation. But You think eternal life, you're like, oh yeah, living forever. But no, it's knowing God.
Yeah.
So if that's our success, if that's our aim that we're going after, I want to know God. I want to teach people to know God because I love him. He has changed my life. That's a good success metric.
Yep.
Therefore, you can remove, if that's the goal, you can remove any fear, insecurity about what happens if I lose this guy? What happens if this worship leader does so good here and somebody else says, hey, we want you to come over here. I don't want to lose this guy. So I'm going to manipulate things and try to get this guy to stay here, make him feel guilty if he tries to leave. I've seen things like that. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
And every time I'm like, you don't trust God at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like you are just moving chess pieces to benefit your church. It's gross, man.
Mm-hmm.
But if the goal is to get people to know God and to grow up in Christ and send the ones out who are called to go, to bring the ones up to a position of leadership who are proving themselves to be good leaders, that's ministry. That's great. But the job of ministering to the world is the churches.
Mm-hmm.
And we've totally abdicated that to the pastoral realm. And that's terrible. That should never be the case. You want to talk about them being a covering, so to speak? I think that's good,
Mm-hmm.
because you could have like, I don't know, like a ministry where there's no checks and there's no covering. There could be all sort of fishy stuff happening.
Right.
But if they have to report and have a lot of transparency, like a church has to know all the happenings, I think that's smart.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
But anyway, so that wasn't even at all what I wanted to talk about. But that was good.
Yeah.
Because it does have to do with culture. Because I feel like that would almost be a good conclusion to what we're talking about. But we'll come back to that.
Okay.
I hope I can remember to come back to that idea. But so all of this kind of kicked off. Do you want to say? Well,
yeah.
I don't want to give my perspective. I'll let you give yours.
So I made a meme.
Freaking memes have gotten more people in trouble.
Yeah, I made a meme. So there was everybody knows the whole DeSantis shipping immigrants off to Martha's Vineyard. Okay. And let's see. I'm going to pull it up for those of you who are watching on YouTube. I'm just going to be fully transparent and share it on share it with you on YouTube.
Okay. I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah. All right. So there it is. So it's the meme of, it's from the Predator movie. It's Carl Weathers.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's Carl Weathers and Arnold Schwarzenegger. They're doing that manly handshake. And so I've got Republicans, as one arm and Democrats as another arm. And it says, when they're holding hands, it says, using immigrants, aka human beings, as political chess pieces.
Yeah.
And so Tim didn't like that. You can see it right, his comment right here. But anyways, let me close that now.
Yeah.
But so that all we had a phone conversation about that, but basically that stemmed from actually. So I've said that I'm a conservative on the show, and I vote conservatively like 9 times out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
Like unless Clinton was back in office, like it would be really. If it were the 90s, you could make a case for me voting for Bill Clinton pre-affair stuff.
Yeah.
I had, nobody knew until it was too late about
I got to plead ignorance on
Right.
that one. I don't know that much about Clinton. I just know
Right.
he presided over a very conservative economy.
He did, yeah, because the House and Senate were controlled most of the time by Republicans, but also Clinton was famous for polling the public on, what kind of policy that we wanted. And it was all basically economically driven. So he would try to push through mainly decisions that would reflect a good economy.
You wouldn't have gone with HW?
George H.W. made it his second term to get elected all about education. And so education wasn't quite on the minds of the American people as the economy, because coming out of the Reagan administration, I don't know how strong the economy was then.
I thought it was pretty darn good.
That's what I heard. I remember, Reaganomics and all that. A lot of Democrats voted for Reagan, but sure, people just want that strong economy, and so this is weird. We're talking about 1990s politics, but Clinton made he made his platform on a strong economy, so that's what got him elected.
Okay. And like I said, I got to plead ignorance here. I can't even come against what you're saying because I don't know. Yeah, I don't. There
might be some Democrat out there who's like, oh, yeah, right, or something like. I don't know, but that's from covering it in history, and then I've watched. I don't know, but I watch documentaries on the 1990s politics, every once in a while. Like, what is for?
Or I don't watch documentary. Well, I have, but I listen to podcasts about the 90s.
But it's specifically about the Clinton administration. I couldn't even vote then.
Right? Yeah.
But it was just such an interesting time to me.
Yeah. I think you're just a fan of history.
Yes. Yeah.
And not just history in one sense, almost like political history. I want to know about the presidents, because I hear people talk about how Biden is Carter 2.0.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know much about Carter. So I was like, oh, okay. I didn't realize he had a lot of similar ideas, so I'm just curious about history. I'm a curious person. But anyway, you said you're conservative.
So yeah, I'm a conservative, and one of the conservative, he probably wouldn't like to be called a pundit, but I think he is Eric Erickson. Okay. He hosts a radio show. He's a commentator. Yeah. He hosts a radio show. He filled Rush's spot from 12 to 3 here in Atlanta. And I like him a lot because I would say most of the time, like 80% of the time, his views line up with mine. And, not only that, he's a theology nerd. Like he's earning his doctorate in theology. So when he said something in 2017 that hooked me on listening to his show, and that was, if you try to balance your politics with your faith, you've made an idol out of politics. Meaning you can't balance the two. Faith always should trump politics.
Yeah, I guess that's one way of looking at it. I would almost say it's not which is greater, which is one has to inform the other. And maybe if that's what he said,
I think that's what he meant. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so I like that perspective because I wasn't hearing too much. I was very new to talk radio at that point, and I have a family member who's super conservative to the point where I just can't talk to the man about politics.
Yeah.
Other things, fine, but not about politics. Because it's depressing. But I like Eric Erickson. He can critique himself. I think that's important. He can say when he was wrong about certain things, and he can critique the Republican Party, but he also just nails a lot of the progressive stuff.
Yeah, and you're probably right. I have mixed feelings about Eric.
Right.
There's things that he said that I like. He's a very respected guy. With the people that I like. I think he filled in for Shapiro on one episode. He filled in for Rush.
Probably.
A lot of people who were very influential and smart, good thinking people quote him, pull up his Twitter account and pull things from it and lean on him. So he's smart. I think he's a very reasonable guy. Right. He's a very establishment guy. He's a very Republican establishment sort of a guy from what I've seen. But where I have mixed feeling, well, I don't know if we want to get into that. where I have mixed feelings about. I feel like he's a very sensible guy, but I feel like he has blind spots.
Yeah, probably. I mean,
I feel like there was a time when every time I tuned in, he was criticizing. I say he's an establishment guy because he is. He's a Republican all day. He'll always vote Republican.
Right.
But when I listened to him, he was just criticizing the Republican Party nonstop, criticizing Trump and Trump supporters. And he was like almost to the point where he was lumping them all into one category. And I was like, that's a blind spot, man.
Yeah.
That's a blind spot. No, I don't agree with you.
Right. So he was for a while a never Trumper. And, so was I.
And we will get into that. We will get into that.
But then, he changed his tune on, Trump because, and he knows exactly why people voted for Trump, and he doesn't fault them at all for doing it. Like he totally understands it. But anyways, I'm saying all this to say is that recently there was that story about DeSantis, like it just happened a few days ago.
Yeah.
Moving these immigrants and asylum seekers to Martha's Vineyard as like a political statement. And so I'm like, well, that's kind of messed up. But then Erickson came on and said, well, the Democrats have been doing the same thing since April. But you didn't hear about it because it doesn't get reported on.
And they're also doing it in the cover of dark.
In the cover of dark, yeah. And they're bringing them to Westchester, New York, which is like an extremely wealthy part of New York. Like you have to be a millionaire to live there. And so why is it so anyways, that kind of set me off. Right. And so I made the meme. It's much more targeted towards progressive liberals, whatever, than it is towards Republicans. Yeah. But I still...
It may have seemed that way in your mind.
It's in my mind, yeah, but I was still upset that, I don't like using human beings as like political stunt puppets.
Well, okay, so this is where I'm at. When I saw that, the very first thing, especially the explanation about using people as political pawns, as soon as I saw that, I had not followed the news really in terms of like listening to what the left is saying or even really a whole lot of what the right is saying. I heard what happened and I smiled very big and I laughed very hard. And I was like, good for you. Good, smart decision. A way to call someone out on their BS. Way to put a mirror up to the total hypocrisy. I love it. I think that's a good, strong, bold move to do.
When you use the word mirror, like, I think that's probably the most graceful thing that you could say, because like I do think that acted as a mirror and towards their hypocrisy. And I told you on the phone, like the most cynical part of me thinks that was funny. Just because
I don't think that's cynical. I think that's a reasonable part of you.
But I mean, because now you've got, these, these dyed in the wool, like progressive people that live in Martha's Vineyard who are, lambasting the Republican Party for being racist and not having more open borders, that now they're having to try to assist these people, put their money where their mouth is.
Right. Which is what they apparently had a town hall in Martha's Vineyard and said, yes, we will be a sanctuary city. And they get immigrants, they feed them and then call the National Guard in and get them out.
Right.
That's not a sanctuary city.
Correct.
That's not a sanctuary city. That's you lying. And I love that someone has the courage to call them out and say, you're a liar, and I'm going to show everybody that you're a liar.
Yeah, and then,
I like that big, bold leadership. That's really good. If that were Trump doing that, he would have talked about it and had a rally where it was like, look at the people over there in Martha's Vineyard, and you'd just hear about it nonstop.
Right.
And it's like, I understand how, even then, I'm still like, yeah, that's Trump, but good for you. Take a victory lap. I don't mind. I don't mind it. And I think where I not lost it, but where I got frustrated with you about that meme was that it seemed like you were putting them both on the same plane. It seemed like you were saying Democrats, well, let me build it this way, okay? And this is just in my mind. I'm not just throwing stuff at you here. When you see Democrats, and all of this is very political, okay? I'm not saying that I want everyone to be Republican. I'm conservative, which means if the Republicans and I are going in the same direction, great.
Mm-hmm.
We're on the same page. It seems like we're mirroring each other. But when they get off, sorry, hey, I'm headed this way. I'm not voting for you this time, or I'm calling that out, whatever it is. So I'm not trying to say Republicans are always right, Democrats are always wrong. I'm just saying, like, let's just look at each issue and say, is this a conservative thought, or is this a, leftist extremist thought?
Mm-hmm.
As much as I want to say liberal, classical liberalism is a good idea.
It is,
That's conservative. Exactly, it's conservative essentially. So when you have Trump pushing for a border wall, and you have the mainstream media and pretty much every flippin' media outlet, including the New York Times and the Washington Post and CNN and MSNBC, every one of them saying this is racist for you to build the wall. The reason we want to build a wall, you don't like brown people. Mm-hmm. I haven't heard this Holy Post.
The Holy Post.
What's his name?
Phil Vischer.
Phil Vischer. He had a thing where he was talking about, like, he was basically saying, like, it was a culture war episode, and he was just basically saying, like, well, you know, all the rich white Christian Americans care about is the economy, mm-hmm. you know, and they put a wall up because they don't like brown people. And I got so mad. I was like, you are a dunce cap. What are you talking about? You know, like, is it that simple to you that we see skin color like this is the 40s or something? Like, what are you talking about? Mm-hmm. So anyway, when I see everyone calling that wall racist, we're going to do everything we can to stop him, get this judge in place to stop the building of the wall. They don't want it. They don't want the wall. We love immigrants. We're so about immigrants. Yeah, and then they did stop him successfully to some degree. He didn't get to finish it and finish the wall in certain spots. And then they get the power. Illegal immigration flows up. And here's the thing. And a lot of this is already talking points in the news. So maybe people have heard this before, and I don't mean to sound like a political commentator, but I think we really do need to think about what is the consequence of having an unbelievable amount of illegal immigration. You have sex trafficking going on right now, and an administration that is promoting people to come to this country, and that means that, like, coyotes are dropping off mothers and children and risking them dying. A lot of them have, like 50 of them died, you know, in the most recent.
And so for anybody that doesn't know what a coyote is, that's somebody who...
I should say coyote.
Yeah.
But I try not to do the accent when I don't use an accent.
It's a person who traffics humans.
Yeah. I think specifically in Mexico, right?
Yes.
You pay a coyote your life savings, and he drops you off close to the border and drives away. Whether you live or die, he don't care. Right. And a lot of them die. Mm-hmm. A lot of them get separated or sex trafficked, God knows what. It's a horrific situation. All the drugs that are pouring across. And I've actually heard that a lot of other countries, like terrorist countries, will send people over to Central America places. And
I've heard that.
Yeah. And then because, hey, the borders are open. Why not? Mm-hmm. And so in 2 years, there's been 2 million people that have crossed the border. I mean,
that's insane. That's a lot to me.
That's enormous. Man.
Yeah.
I can't even fathom how much that is.
It's half of Atlanta, if you don't know.
Right. And if you've been to Atlanta, you don't want half of Atlanta anywhere. I can't stand Atlanta. But with the amount of stress that causes on border towns, border cities, border states is unbelievable. The amount of, like, human rights violations that happen because you can't do anything. I can't help them. We don't have the economy to help them. So we have to spend taxpayer dollars to move them all over the place, you know? Mm-hmm. And so you see, like, a gross violation of, like, human rights in my mind on the Biden administration, just calling it what it is. When I see that, and then I see DeSantis do something like this, and then it seemed like you were saying all those things are bad, but Republicans are guilty too because they did something that was
Right.
question. I was just like, are you crazy? I was like, these two are not on the same category. They're not. Like, they're absolutely not. Like, one small thing, and I even said in the comment, like a private conversation we were having, that I was saying, like, I feel like you're just nitpicking at tiny little things and saying, and the reason why it drives me so crazy. So this meme kind of set it off, but it wasn't just the meme. It's a bigger thing that I see with believers, believers who may lean a little more progressive, lean a little bit more to the left. I see them, and maybe this is bad for me to assume their motivation, but it seems like they're trying to appeal to the world and say, I'm not one of those crazy Trump supporters. I'm not that shirtless, walking around Walmart. I'm not one of those Republicans or one of those conservatives. I'm not one of those Christians who will say, if you're sick, pray. No, if you're sick, go to the doctor. I feel like they're trying to appeal to them. And it almost stinks of me as being a fear of man. Now, I'm not accusing you of that. I'm just saying this is the overall thing that I'm getting. And so when I see believers who it seems like all they do is criticize the right and criticize Christians and criticize Republicans, I'm like, I just see insane amounts of immorality and sin and disgusting lying politicians on the left all the time. And all you care about is like, well, you shouldn't have said that. That was bad. Trump doing that thing, saying that thing, that was bad. So therefore, I can't support him. And it's like, but you're going to support the devil
right
over here.
So you said it in the phone conversation that we had pretty well, is that conservatives and Christians have built their reputation on having higher standards, right? And so when and like I like hone in on that, like hardcore, like I would even say that I'm a legalist about that. I do think that we hold ourselves to a higher standard, and we should. And so I saw this. So yeah, I do nitpick, especially with things like this. And so, yeah, this meme came out of a legalistic place for sure. Because I don't think that we should be playing games. However, it didn't. What the thing that set me off is not necessarily what DeSantis and Charlie Abbott are doing. It's learning the other information about what's been going on since April in the cover of Night. I'm like, you can't just get on a high horse when you're doing the same thing, and it's just not getting covered because you have a D in front of your name.
Right.
So,
yeah. And that's good. That's right. And that I like that frustrates you, because I think it should frustrate anyone.
So I guess the question for me is what's more compassionate? Is it more compassionate? I'm going to lay out my whole system of border control policy.
Okay.
What's more compassionate? Is it more compassionate to have a more open border like we've had with these 2 million people coming in over the last 2 years? Or is it more compassionate to have a safer border, more controlled border, like the way Trump wanted? And then, so what's more compassionate? Because you've got these illegal aliens, but there are also a lot of people who are asylum seekers. They're refugees. Like if you go to Venezuela, you've got Maduro as the president, and he is not. He's a dictator, and the economy is in the trash.
Oh my gosh!
Because
that was thriving too, right?
That country? I mean they used to be thriving. They were a big oil producer. They still are.
What was the dictator's name before him?
Was it Hugo Chavez?
That sounds right. Yeah. Yeah, and he bankrupted it, turned it totally socialist.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, it was he, and so Maduro was the successor.
Right. So if you came from that country, and everyone's eating dogs and
I read a story a year ago where a mob lynched a man because he stole $5 from a guy, and they killed him.
Yeah.
That's how serious it is
well,
in places like that. And then you've got the government stamping out any type of opposition, as far as getting somebody else elected, because there was a whole like big almost civil war in Venezuela a couple of years ago, where the Trump administration recognized the opposition leader.
I remember that. Yeah.
But now Maduro's basically back in charge.
Stomp that out. What sounds like the not Iran. What is it? Palestinian. Anyways, the Palestinian government, that's pretty much, it's like, we're going to have an election, and then it didn't turn out the way they wanted. And so it's like, well, we're going to delay and delay and delay. And it's like, yeah, they're total authoritarian.
And so you've got people seeking asylum from that country. And then there's places like El Salvador, which is worse, where you have gangs, like big gangs, threatening people, threatening everywhere. Christians like Pentecostals and Catholics. So a lot of these asylum seekers are religious. They're our brothers and sisters in Christ. And so I don't know if this is going to upset people, but to me, it's more compassionate to have a more secure border, so that the people who genuinely need, like, to come to America to seek safety in the United States, get here and can have that different life. They can have the quote unquote American dream. But the problem is right now is that you have so many people overloading the border to where those people can't get through when they need to get through.
Right.
And
you're absolutely right. And I would make this point. It's not the government's job to be compassionate. It's the government's job to secure the border. That's actually like literally a part of the president's job in the Constitution. You have to secure the border. You need to have a strong military. Compassion's for the church.
Right.
Yeah,
well, I'm saying, like, as a voter, okay.
I know, but I think that's the issue. I agree with you 100%. But I'm saying that's the issue. I don't like when politics try to appeal to morality because it's fake.
Okay.
It's always fake and trashy. And I hate. Maybe I got this from my my oldest brother Adam. We were watching TV and it was showing a clip from like the Navy, and it was like Navy, a global force for good. And he was like, global force for good? What are you, Greenpeace? He's like, you're a military.
Yeah.
You're a military for war, for defense. You're not out there, in the jungle saving trees.
No.
Like, that's not your job. And I think so much of this is lost today because you should never look to a politician for morality. You're gonna find Nancy Pelosi is what you're gonna find, or some other crazy person who's so morally inept that it's like, I don't like when politicians try to turn on their serious voice and appeal to the voter's conscience. I see it. It's fake. It's BS. Right. I think the majority of people do. I think you need to have a strong border because especially if you share a border with Mexico, which the drug traffickers essentially own that whole country.
Right.
And so you need to have a strong border because if you don't, chaos will ensue. I'm telling you, we don't know yet what has come across this border already. We will find out. But I'm telling you, I think it's scary what's come across. But I agree with you in the sense that, like, is it more compassionate just to take in the world and then bankrupt us and have equal poverty? Or is it more compassionate to have a strong government and a strong economy and a strong sealed border so that we can accept the people and properly vet them?
Right.
Make sure they're not sex traffickers. Make sure they don't have fentanyl hidden everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah. That's it's like saying I'm so compassionate and I'm going to let this homeless person into my house. Actually, all the homeless people, come on in. People are going to look at me and be like, you don't love your wife and your kids because you need to protect them. Me as a husband, it's my job to protect my wife and kids. The government's the same thing, hate to make that analogy, but yeah, it's their job to protect the country, and it's the job of the church to be compassionate.
Mm-hmm.
But Jesus even said, "Be as wise as serpents."
Mm-hmm.
You know, because there's a lot of evil in the world. People will deceive you.
Right.
But yeah.
And so basically, like it's not you like, so you could be compassionate, but also compassion doesn't make a bad idea a good idea. Okay. And so I see a lot of people who are compassionate out there, but like you said, we need to be wise, and you can still be compassionate and orderly at the same time. Right now, it's just like, the pictures that you see on the news of, there's always that bridge that I see in the river going under the bridge, and it's always packed with people just trying to get over the border, and it's like there's no order there. How can we do what we need to do if we don't have that order? And like, if I'm gonna go into like a flood scenario here, but basically, the chaos isn't good for anybody, and you don't want to say things like that because there's people involved, and you don't want to just say, well, like these people are causing chaos, or they're chaotic. But if you don't have the vetting, if you don't have a more secure border, then that chaos is going to overload your compassion. And we're going to be,
and then people will be cold about immigrants,
right?
When maybe they weren't before. And that's kind of what I see, and I really try not to even get into race at all. But this is one of the things that I see. If you're called a racist all the time, eventually you'll get to the point where you're like, all right, fine, you want to see some racism? And then you suddenly start feeling all of these things, and you're like, wait a minute, this isn't me. What is this? I'm just tired of being accused all the time.
Right.
So that's what I see about this, where it's like, I don't have a problem with immigration. Actually, the conservative standpoint is really, it's not about us for and no more. We're a country of immigrants.
Right.
That's always been the case. So the straw man argument is like, conservatives hate immigrants.
Right.
That's not true. We just like order, And I want you to be properly vetted. I love, I'll give you an example. This American Life, the podcast. I don't know if you ever heard that.
I don't think I've ever listened to it now.
It used to be really good. They had an episode where they talked to someone who was from, where was that guy from? Somalia, maybe, I can't remember. But he was from some country, and apparently there's a lottery about who can come in. There's like a random lottery that we have where we let in, say, 5,000 immigrants every year. From places like that, are countries that are at least pretty poor. I don't know if they're third world, but maybe it was Indonesia this guy was from. And this guy won the lottery. And it was unbelievable. And it was so cool to hear how excited he was to come to the United States. And like, no part of me was like, you stay in your own country. Right. I was like, I love it. That's the type of person I want to come into this country.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who likes it, who's like, I'm going to get to be an American. There's a sense of pride there. I love it, man. That's what I want. But like, we don't have a system that really like fosters patriotism, like good patriotism. I mean, like love of country, and to know the history of our country, and the foundations that we were planted on, like understanding individual liberty over like a king sovereign rule. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like that I want to see more of that fostering in the education system. And I don't right now. I feel like the popular thing to do is this goes in line with what we're talking about culture wars, but like, to see in the education system, like, it's popular to hate this country. It's popular to call everyone who came before you a racist. It's popular to think you know everything, but you know nothing. Have you ever seen those really sad YouTube videos where the guy asked the most basic questions to Gen Z?
Yes. Yeah.
I have watched those.
It's
sad.
Yeah, I've seen them. I don't like what was it, Jesse Waters that does them?
No, but he does one. Yes.
Okay, yeah.
He does some things, and PragerU does some too.
That's right. They do.
I'm talking about one that's like this guy literally says like I don't know, like what continent are we on right now?
Okay,
and
yeah.
Like I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm like,
I've seen
whoa,
those videos.
you know, like what's
like
3
that,
times 3 times 3? Like, man, I don't know math.
Right.
I'm like, oh my gosh. Or like he has a clock and says, what time does this clock say? And it's like, it's maddening and funny and maddening. And I keep watching them and I'm like, why am I watching this?
Yeah.
This is going to make me so mad. But so if we had a culture that fostered like an appreciation for our history, and I feel like people who were more progressive, let's just call it what it is, the radical left, they really don't see that like everyone's coming to this country. Why is that? You know, why aren't they jumping over the borders to get into Baghdad? You know, to get into all these other socialists like Venezuela? Why aren't they going there? You know, it's like freedom of speech.
That's not real, but Tim, that's not real socialism.
That's not real socialism, right?
Right. If we tried it here, it would work.
Right.
That's why I hate that argument.
So, do you want to say anything before I'm going to kind of shift this on the same vein?
No, like, so, yeah, I mean, I see what you're getting at. So I told my students this past week that in the 1950s, if you were to ask a student to draw an accurate map of the United States, they could do a great job at it. And so
I would really struggle with the East Coast, though.
Right?
The Northeast.
But you can't. They wouldn't be able to do it now because they did. They tested it. I think it was in 2015. It was bad. The results were bad. So I mean, there is something about like in public school, this public school system, and especially in the bigger cities, like we moved a lot. We moved far from that, and so I'm glad I'm a teacher in a private school.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I've heard. Now I'm not an expert on this, but I've heard a lot of people talk about one of the reasons why public schools went bad so fast had to do with the Cultural Revolution of the 60s. That really, really gutted and corrupted. Was kind of getting the ball rolling. On the downhill slide.
Yeah, I mean, probably. And that, and the fact that like taxes pay for the education in each state and city, and if you're in a poorer part of the state or city, you're not going to get good resources, so you have to depend on other resources, and you know, you never know what they're gonna have you teach.
But you know, and I don't know where you're at on this. I have heard because I hear so many arguments about transparency being such an important thing. I heard someone say, "Why don't we just put a camera in every classroom? And if you want to know what your kids are learning, stream it. You know, they can't hide anything if that's the case." And I was like, I like it. I think that's a good idea. You're all about transparency. Let's hear what you're teaching. Yeah. Because a lot of the education kickback came in 2020 when, you know, people were online when there was no reason for them to be online. I mean, early in the pandemic, I understand there was a lot of people didn't know what this was, where to go from here. But eventually there hit a spot in like fall of 2020. Everyone's like, I think this is okay. Yeah. I think we can stop having the kids wear the masks. And the teachers' unions were truly exposed for how corrupt all that was. And I think a lot of parents were like paying attention to what their kids were learning. And it was like, you are terrible. Like, what are you teaching? And they were actually able to kind of get a firsthand glimpse on what the kids were learning. And a lot of it was Marxism. You know? But anyway.
They could have done it earlier. I wish they did. I always would hear about, I've said this before in like the podcast or two ago, how parents should have always been paying attention
Right.
to what their kids were learning.
Right.
And they're like, I don't know what they're teaching. Well, what is your kid got homework? Look at it.
Yeah.
Ask your kid what paper they're writing in their English class. Like one of the books one of the books that I read when I was 17 had to do with Vietnam. This was in one of my English classes, and it was after Vietnam. About the book was called In Country. It's also a movie too. This girl who's going to college and she's meeting like her dad's war buddies, and she gets a crush on one, and then they go in his apartment and they have this super inappropriate conversation that, you know, minors probably shouldn't be reading. And then she fantasizes in daydreams about this guy. And I'm like, then it didn't bother me, but in now, like, I'm with all the other stuff that's come out, and this was in 1999 when I read that book, 2000, whatever. But now with all of the other stuff that's come out, I'm like, how did we get away with this for so long? Because there's no way that, you know, that book was basically, you know, in parts pornographic.
For sure.
And so, you know, why were minors allowed to read that? You know, you're a minor until you're 18.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could read that stuff in college. Whoop-de-doo. You're a young adult verging into adulthood,
right?
So and you got to come across those things.
Yeah, and in college, you're supposed to be exposed to tons of things.
Yes,
I'm not saying you should expose yourself to porn. I just mean expose yourself to tons of ideas. You know, and hear pros and cons and all that.
But I mean, there's like, I remember watching YouTube videos of school board meetings and the parents detailing and the students detailing what they were learning. And then, you know, we have people here that we know talking about advocating against the kind of stuff that their kids were reading. And I'm like, how was this happening? And I really think it's because a lot of parents weren't paying attention when they should have.
And there's some truth to that. I actually love what you're saying. That's very true.
So like, and this goes to this. It's part of a bigger picture for me of, you know, discipleship starts in the home. You shouldn't always be depending on Sunday school 1 hour a week or youth night. You know, if you want your kids to be have a strong faith, you yourself should have a strong faith, and you should be. And I really kind of, like, Anna points this out, how we kind of suck at that in our home, but it's still like, no, because like I have a master's degree in theology, theological studies, but we struggle with, although our kids love it now, with reading the Bible together as a family. And so so what I'm saying is that we've been convicted by that hardcore.
That's good.
Lately. And so I don't want to just say, hey, we've been doing it perfectly.
No, but you suck at everything until you're good at it. Right. So you have to keep trying it.
Yeah.
There's things, you can grab some more water if you want.
No, I'm good.
Okay. No, there's things that have taken some work, and I'll give you a funny example. I was trying to do a devotion with my kids, with my two oldest ones, and they didn't have their like normal like little devotion book, so they have two of them. You were looking at one tonight, actually, the VeggieTales one.
Yeah, and
there's another one by Louis Giglio about science.
Yes,
it's really cool, man. Yeah. I love that one.
Yeah,
and you know, my oldest one is like super into science, and as I'm reading these things, like they'll have like he'll talk about like, did you know this thing has all of its teeth inside its body? And every time I'm reading this, I'm like, oh, no kidding. Like, it's super interesting to me. And he does a really good job of like bringing the parallel back to the Word and about God. And he's great. And we couldn't find that book anywhere. And I was like, yeah, we need to do a devotion, but I don't know where your book is. And I think the Holy Spirit just asked me like, well, what are you reading? And I was like, oh, I'm in 1 John. And I was like, it's 1 John. I don't know if that's like conducive to children. You know, of course, all of the word is, but I couldn't think of anything, and I was just like, okay, what am I reading about right now? About I'm trying to remember what it was now, but I think it was about if we say we have no sin, there's no truth in us, we're lying. But if we confess our sins one to another, he is faithful and just to forgive us. So it's like, that was the thing that came up to me. But before that happened, before the scripture came to me, I couldn't, I was reading it and I was like, I had read it, I understood it, I had time with God, it was good. Now it's time to have devotion with the kids. And I couldn't make it simple. And what I kept hearing in my head was the old dean of students at Rhema say, if you can't explain it to a child, you don't understand it.
Right.
You don't fully understand it. And I was just so humbled by that. And I was like,
yeah,
okay, how do I bring this? And I felt like you've seen my son Ruben walk. He looks funny. Yeah. When little kids start to walk, you have kids of your own, you see them walk, they look kind of funny. And I think when you try something new, it feels weird.
Yeah.
It's like, let's try to do this devotion. And as you're telling them about God and you're looking at their expressions and they're looking everywhere else. And you're like, hey, this is serious. Focus. And you're just like, oh, this is great. Let's talk about love and God when I'm screaming at you,
Yes.
So all of it's weird and awkward. But the funny thing was, once we did this devotion, I was explaining to them about how we should never let guilt and condemnation come between us and God. He knows all. So it's just best to confess it to God and to your friends or, whoever is trustworthy. And he's always faithful and just to forgive us. And the truth is he already forgave us in Christ. So as I was saying that, I thought my oldest one was getting it. And I looked at the next one, Paxton, and I was like, I don't think he's getting this, but it's all good. And I was like, okay, you want to pray? And Paxton gets up and he goes, I want to pray. And he said, God, I ask that you forgive me for opening the door when I wasn't supposed to and walking out of the door when I wasn't supposed to. And I was like, I had tears in my eyes. And I was like, not only did he get it, he understood the application.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So I guess I say that to say don't feel bad about not being good at it. That was that moment. I can name 500 more that was stupid, where I said something and I was like, I don't know how to explain this. Right. So you're not good at anything until you learn to be, But yeah. So I was going to transition to something else, unless you wanted to
talk
more about border control.
No.
But oh shucks, now where was that? I'm trying not to go on my notes here. I'm just trying to go from the point we were talking about. Okay, so yeah, okay. So it was the idea about the meme, kind of going back to the meme. And once again, it's not about the meme, but it's about the meme. It's meme culture is funny to me. But some of it can seem so. It's like putting something that is really big, important, controversial, and deep into one funny little, screw you and your thoughts sort of thing. That's like, oh, that's so schmucky. Why would you? I'm not saying yours was. I just mean that's what memes do. Yeah, they like to poke someone in the eye.
No, yeah,
and
totally.
And sometimes it's fun when you see one that you agree with. But I think when I was referring to it speaking to something bigger than just that, I think what I see from a lot of people, maybe with Never Trumpers too, is this. It's almost like a high-mindedness where you're saying, I'm not going to sink to the level of someone like Donald Trump or like fill in the blank, because they're wrong, they're bad, and they're focusing on the trees and missing the forest. Well, what's the forest? And here's one of the illustrations that I was thinking of. And I'll just put it this way. Do you remember? I'm a World War II buff. Do you know the powers that were the main three that were involved? The main three countries that were involved.
The Allies or the Axis?
Both. Do you remember both? Who is it?
So you've got Great Britain, United States, and Australia. No, the Great.
Well, they
three.
were our allies, but the big three.
The big three. Yes, and Russia.
Russia.
Okay. Yep.
And so in the opposition,
you got Japan, Germany, and Italy.
Yeah, great, fantastic. You're the only one I've talked to who's got that.
Really?
Yeah.
I would hope that
Well,
since I'm a history not professor, but a teacher. That would know.
Yeah, good. Well, I love it. I love World War II history. So this might seem like a bad comparison, but this is how I understand it. This is how I understand what unity is, and the idea of missing the forest for the trees. So when I was explaining to my wife, I was explaining who was the third person, not just the country, but who was the leader.
Yeah.
And I said, did you know who the third one was? And she was like, no. And I was like, it's Joseph Stalin. And she was like, give me a look. It was like, the Joseph? I'm like, yes, the Joseph Stalin was our ally in World War II. And so I think that makes me think, well, why would you align yourself with someone who killed more people than Hitler?
Right.
Like actually did. I know maybe he wasn't fully there yet, but we knew he was totally going to be our enemy. We knew that this guy is not good. He's not right. But for the time being, we need him because what's the old saying? The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Right.
So it's like we saw that we needed him for the time being. And how about this? This is maybe a small thing, but you could say, I'm not going to align myself with Joseph Stalin because he's a dictator and he's a socialist and his policies have been destroying the country, sucking the life out of it. We're not going to align with him. We're also not going to align with Winston Churchill because he's an alcoholic and a crazy person and says mean things to people on the parliament floor all the time. And he's a character and we're done with him. We're not doing that. But we are going to be strong in fighting this war. We would have lost. We would have lost that war. No question. And then you would have seen the rise of more spread of Emperor Hirohito. And we know about all the atrocities that they were doing in China through the rape of Nanking. I had a whole section on that I studied. It was painful to get through. To hear all those atrocities. And then you would have seen Adolf Hitler take over all of Europe.
Right.
Maybe Russia.
I don't know. The Germans,
they hit a brick wall.
They did because they made
They
made the same mistake as Napoleon's army. Was they fought him in the winter. They tried to go in Russia in the winter. You can't do that.
Right.
So, but they eventually maybe because they had a very strong military.
Yeah, because and really, I think you would have seen Japan probably to have a role in that too. Yeah, but it's a whole lot of maybes. True. Yep. It's a whole lot of maybes. But the point I'm making is that sometimes you have to align yourself with people that you don't fully agree with, or they're not on the same page morally, because you all see the bigger picture. And so what I see in the church is, I'm not comparing Donald Trump to Joseph Stalin. Let me just say that. I don't think he's Joseph or anything like him. I just mean what I hear with a lot of never Trumpers or believers is that they love to criticize and say, I don't want anything to do with him. I'm not voting for him. I don't do that. It's like, but you're not looking at the big picture here. Like, what's going to happen if we had Obama and 8 years of him and then 8 years of Hillary Clinton? Woo, we'd be in a different spot, right? Because you can see that the one side is really pushing that radical left. I remember this is a side note, but I remember hearing Hillary Clinton's campaign little commercial right before the election, and my mouth dropped when I heard it. I was like, "That's your pitch?" It was literally it was an economic one, and she said, "If I am president, we are going to tax the rich at like this crazy level. And if giant corporations decide to send jobs overseas, we're going to have a 30% tax on all to move, 30% tax bringing things in." And I was just thinking to myself, so if you own a big company and have millions or thousands of employees, whatever, hundreds of thousands, you're the enemy. We hate you. So if you're going to be rich and successful in this country, we hate you, and we are going to rake you over the coals if you're successful, if you stay here. And if you decide to leave, we're going to rake you even more over the coals.
Right.
And I was like, is that a pitch? Who are you pitching to? That's a terrible idea. And And I just remember seeing that and being like, oh God, I wish we would have gotten somebody better than Trump to run against her. You know, in my mind, I'm thinking this.
Yeah.
And the fact that he won was amazing. But that's kind of the way that I see what a lot of I understand the moral failings and not wanting to vote. Like I said before, when you voted for Trump in 2016, you probably should have done it with some shame.
Yes.
You know, but I think the idea is you put the person in place who you think is going to do a better job.
Uh-huh.
Who's going to do a better job? And can we pull him farther to the right? Can we pull him farther to, or her, whatever, to a more conservative stance, to a more moral stance? Can we say, we voted for you, but we hate the way you talk? We voted for you, but we're not for this. There's something that I thought Ben Shapiro did really well, is that he said he did not think Trump was going to run as conservative as he did, but he did. He was super conservative. But when he did something right, he praised him. And when he did something wrong, he called him out.
Yeah.
But it was both. And I think that's great. I think that's exactly what you should do. But vote for the person who's going to represent the actual Constitution. I don't like this idea. It seems so high horsey to just be like, I don't like him. I'm not going to align myself with him. And I'm not going to be one of those. So I'm going to be somewhere in the middle. And it's like, there is no middle. You will get run over.
Well, that's that's the thing though, is I did not like Trump as a person at all. I did not like Christians backing this morally bankrupt man. I thought that they were being very morally relative by doing so.
You're talking about 2016.
2016,
okay,
yes.
You're not wrong.
Okay. So, we had heard about all the evangelicals saying, this postmodern country, everybody believes morals are relative when they suit them. Now let's vote for Trump. And I'm like, are you serious?
Right.
And so
that's a really good point.
I was mad. I wasn't really mad at Trump. I was mad. This goes back to the nitpicking thing, but I thought it was a big issue. I was mad at those evangelicals. So I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm gonna like put some mud in your eye and not vote for the man. And the second thing was, it's like we forced ourselves into this place where our choices were Hillary Clinton, who I wouldn't, if you put a gun to my head, I would not vote. Shoot me in the head. I would not vote for her.
For sure.
And then Donald Trump. It's like we put ourselves there because we refused to, maybe the reason for this. We can't lift up anybody better than those two. And it's like, and then in 2020, our choices, well, Trump did good with the economy, so there's that. But then Joe Biden, and then like that's the best that they could do. Joe Biden, the man who had lost his son before that, but he's also so I thought that I really think that had an impact on his mental health. Okay, and with his aging, and a lot of people make fun of his decline, but I really think a lot of it has to do with the death of his son, and the man is nearing 80. Okay, so I'm not trying to like diss elderly people or anything like that, but you could see that there was his age was taking a toll on it.
That he has like early stage dementia.
Yeah,
you can see that then.
Right. So, and I really feel like he was used.
Yes, and is being used.
It is being used, and I can't stand that.
Yeah.
And then but the right was still, propping up a still morally bankrupt person. However, he had a lot of wins for the conservatives.
A ton.
Especially with the Supreme Court. That's a big deal.
That's huge, man.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what I mean. Like that's the bigger picture.
Right.
Is seeing like we had 3 justices replaced and they're now all conservative.
Right. But the frustrating thing.
Important.
Yeah, it is. And the frustrating thing is, to me, why couldn't we do that with somebody else?
Well, because somebody else didn't run.
But we had 16 people running for.
That's true.
The office.
That's true. But I guess I'm answering a criticism that I hear all the time. Like, are these 2 the best? I'm like, no, the best person never runs for president.
True.
You know? And I heard that about Thomas Sowell, who's a really smart guy.
Yes, I know.
Really smart conservative economist. And I'm like, why don't you run? Because he's like, I don't want to run. That's why you should run.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be great. You're not trying to move up the corporate ladder. You're not trying to move up the political ladder. I mean, but I think we get who we get. But I understand what you mean. I do get that. It's like, well, I liked Ben Carson. Right. Well, Ben Carson supported Trump. And then once he did, I was mad at him.
Right. I voted
like,
for.
Why did you do that?
I voted for the, Marco Rubio. So I really wanted him to be president.
Yeah.
I didn't like Cruz because I thought just the way he talks to people looks like he's condescending them all the time.
Okay.
So.
I love Cruz. I love Cruz and I voted for him and I'm very happy he's a senator. But when I hear him talk, I'm like, I don't know that I believe you.
I think I'm very superficial sometimes when it comes to that. But I liked Rubio, I especially liked him more when I think it was the New York Times reported that he had 17 parking tickets. And like, or he had expensive shoes. I'm like, this is the worst, right? Yeah. That's the worst dirt that they could get out of the guy.
Yeah. But I remember back when Obama was running for his first term, like he voted as a senator for like an insane abortion, not bill, but like, one of the votes that came before him as a senator in Illinois was like he voted present on like almost all of them except for like 2. And one of them was like, can you abort your baby at 2 years old or something like that? And he was like, yes. And I was like, whoa.
Right.
Media kind of just walked over that, or something crazy like that. But in any case, yeah, you're right. Or like, what was it? Paul, this is just funny to me, but Paul Ryan, when he was the running for VP with Mitt Romney, when they were like, you wrote down the wrong race time in your marathon. How can we trust you?
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's what you guys have?
Yeah. Last year you said you were 53 and now you say you're 54 this year?
Yeah.
Come on.
It was, it's crazy. But where are we getting with that? Oh, I think that's good. I think you're right when you say that in 2016 to see like a lot of evangelical Christians not just say we're voting for him, but like try to say, maybe cover up his moral failings or say, we don't care about that. I'm not sure what the right answer was, right? But I remember thinking, yeah, I get it. He's not a good born again, spirit filled Christian, but the opposition is a crazy nutbag. So this is an easy decision.
I mean, there was a clear point where it was going to be Trump and Hillary.
Right.
And so
and that was kind of scary to me.
At that point in time, it's like, well, you've got to back one of the horses. I didn't. I voted for a guy who ended up might as well be a progressive. Was it
Gary?
No, it was McMullins. Evan McMullin.
I think I do know that name.
Well, he was a very hardcore never Trumper after that. And like, people say he went off the deep end. I didn't pay any attention to him after he clearly did not win the election. He got like 0.4% of the. Yeah,
right. And that's kind of what I mean. I think that, and I think I said this on the previous podcast that I see it as a throwaway, but that's my opinion. Yeah. And I hate to treat someone's votes, which are really important, as a throwaway. But look, we're a 2-party political system, so it's going to be one or the other. So which one do you think is going to do the better job? I try to simplify things as much as possible. So that's what I saw. But I think you can vote for someone you have some concerns for and pull them and try to. You can't really reach the president to try to pull him in that direction, but certainly pray for him to be more in touch with
right.
with Christianity if he is really a Christian.
Right.
But I also saw a lot of the people that he put around himself were really good.
Mm-hmm.
Like the spiritual counsel that he had around himself was really good. And a lot of the people that he put in place were pretty good. He had some bad ones, but
Yeah.
But in any case, I hate to even spend this much time on politics. I think it was just the idea that I see people completely missing the forest for the trees, and they spend so much time just kind of nitpicking and specifically referring to, I'm going to repeat what we talked about, but specifically referring to that about seeming like they're both on the same page, or they're both on the same level of criticism. That drove me crazy, because it's like, we don't have, on the right, have zero power right now. It's like they own the executive branch, they own the House and the Senate. They own it. So they can jam through anything, and they have. They spent more money than anyone has ever seen.
Yes.
In history of the world, they have spent it. And we have like no power, no control, no authority. So how much criticism should we receive for pretty much anything? Uh-huh. I'm not saying that gives us a pass, but I'm saying, here's the scenario that I gave to you. Let's just say in November, we win the House and the Senate. Republicans win House and Senate. Biden's essentially a lame duck, except for executive orders, which is candy to him. Then we have a responsibility to pull the country in the right direction. So let's say 2024, a Republican wins. We now have the same thing they have. Okay, that's when the criticism maybe should start to come in, because it's like, this is the direction we need to go, and if they're not going that way, we need to send them that way. And I remember even when Trump had the presidency and both houses, it was like, or the Congress, I mean, that was like the death of the Tea Party, because they spent just as much as they always do. And I was like, then what's the point of having all this republicanism if you're not going to do something with it? This is why I say I'm not a Republican, because they drive me nutso.
Yeah.
I'm a conservative. So it's like, I think that's where the criticism needs to come in at. When you start to criticize when there's like no power, you're giving them a pass. And we need to draw really clear lines. Who is the enemy here? I'm not saying enemy like, let's go fight a war with the leftists. I'm just saying, who is really responsible for the way things are right now, for an unsecure border, for a trash education system? Who's responsible for like a complete government overreach? We need to be on the same side as the right. We have got to be on the same side. So when I see all this criticism, I'm like, you're missing the point. I'm not saying that some of it's not justified, but I just never hear it. I never hear it on criticizing the people on the left. And I think the argument I hear most often is, well, we criticize our own party or our own, like the church, because we hold ourselves to a higher standard, and they are them. They're the world.
Right.
But if we don't call evil in the world, then the person who doesn't fully understand will go with the flow. This is what Proverbs says when it talks about like, you correct a fool to educate the learning, or something like that. I'm butchering that. I hate to paraphrase the Bible. But the idea is that you have to make a clear line of what's right and what's wrong, whether it's the church or whether it's the world. We as the church have got to be the light and say, we are for this. We are for this in the political sphere, in the moral, in education. We have got to be salt and light, instead of just criticizing the church, instead of criticizing people like Sean Foyt, instead of criticizing all these pastors. That high horse criticism drives me up a wall. I can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
I hate to see it. It's like,
are we going to unify at all?
Right.
Okay.
I was going to continue, but I don't want to just rant.
No,
do you have anything?
No, I mean, like I see it, because especially with, I'm turning into a middle-aged conservative here, but ever since the pandemic, like there was I did start to get more fed up with things going on the left, like when I found out that there was going to be a stimulus check issued, I was like, well, okay, I guess. And then they're like a second one, and I'm like, what? I don't think that's good. And because like it was just going to start this domino effect of, and it did. Now we're, eating inflation for breakfast. And then, with the mask stuff in the schools, when kids are not immune, but they're not impacted nearly to the level that adults are.
Right.
Like, my kids got COVID. There was nothing to them.
Yeah.
And that was true for, I want to say that was true for most kids.
Overwhelmingly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Statistically.
There was always the outlier, of course, but for most kids, like even the CDC didn't recommend it for kids over 5. And yet you had all of these schools. And then you had teachers pushing back on that who are going through like chemotherapy. And, I feel bad that they have cancer, but like, you stay home until you're healthy.
Right.
And, but then that brings up issues of, can they get paid while they're at home? But at the same time, like there was so much overreach happening
for sure.
And it's just, I'm very thankful that I live in Georgia, and it really kind of illuminated me what Governor Kemp did and how he acted. Really kind of illuminated some things, because I thought that he was really wise in how he handled the pandemic and how he kept our economy open. He left like the decisions of masks up to the companies,
the individual,
and individuals. So, but he didn't keep us shut down. Right. You saw the cities that stayed shut down suffered terribly. Yeah. Like I see ads for California to tourism saying this is a comeback story. But then on the news last week, Governor Newsom said, try not to use electricity during peak hours.
Right.
And I'm just like, bro,
you're not coming back.
No. How is that a comeback story?
Yeah.
So
we were the first ones to open. I remember my dad texted me and said, I'm coming to Georgia. I'm going to get a haircut.
There were lots of people that left California.
Yeah. Dude, tons.
And, some of them, their children go to my school. So,
interesting.
Yeah. So, and so I get what you're saying. And like, we are coming to a time where we really need to start unifying. I would say that it's very difficult to do that when everybody's theology is right. There's very clear, you need to have, okay, let me slow down. I need to slow down my brain. Good orthodoxy, good doctrine is important because it helps you understand who God is. Right. You understand God rightly. But the problem is that each church can have their own doctrine, their own teaching that differs from another church or denomination, and we haven't figured out how to get around that. You know what I'm saying? Unless you're a charismatic.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So that is a great segue into talking more about church unity, because like I said, we spend some time on politics, but we are talking about culture wars, and politics seems to be in every avenue of our culture, and I hate that. And as a conservative, I don't want that. But some of this may just be a response to what I see, what I hear, that it's inundated in every part of our culture. So I'm responding to it, but, and it's also really important. And I think it speaks to a bigger issue about the idea of being in the world. And how do we as the church be successfully in the world and influence our culture. And I think a good line of thinking, I'm going to steal this from my oldest brother, and this is, conservative thought, but like that politics is the last bastion of how to turn a culture around. It's not really ideal. It's not ideal to get your party in office so that they can pass laws to control everything, to push it in the direction you want. That's not conservative thought. Conservative understands the idea of the power of the individual. Mm-hmm. And not just conservative, I would say as the believer. You want to change a nation, you don't do it by overthrowing the government. You do it by the individual. And Jesus didn't just die for the whole world, that he died for each individual person in the whole world. Mm-hmm. So if you want to change a home, you start by changing like the husband and the wife and promoting like love in the marriage and promoting values there. And you're not going to change drastic things if you can't change small things. Mm-hmm. So I can't change the world if I can't control my temper, mm-hmm. So you have to begin at a smaller level. And I think a good example of that is like, what was I going to say? You can pass laws that say it's illegal to do something, but let's say they passed a law that said like conservatives are not allowed to have affairs. They're not allowed to be drunk out in the street and have giant house parties and have orgies in the street. Mm-hmm. Do we need a law to say that? Or that we're looking at that law and saying like, what is it? Okay, fine. My relationship with God will dictate that. I don't need a law to tell me that. So that's kind of the idea that I'm getting to. And so I talk about politics not because I think that's the answer. I think that it really is, we're headed towards the kingdom, about building the kingdom. So that includes strong families. That includes like getting people off of drugs, getting people free from drugs. That includes getting people jobs. You got to have a good economy to be able to get people set up with jobs. And you have to have a strong economy to be able to do that, to be able to get those opportunities. We are about raising children to be good citizens, right? To not be rebellious. So when a political party is going in the same direction as us, it's easy to look at that and say like, oh, most Christians are Republicans. Why is that? Well, you could look at that in a cynical perspective and say like, well, it's because they want power. Or you could look at it and say they're going in the same direction as us, but you have more knowledge on like first century church and second century church and all that. But it seems like the first century church was not really involved in politics and in the government of their time. And in a lot of the history, you don't see the church taking power.
Well,
or if you do, it's like really bad.
Well, the church took power. Mm-hmm. The church was the political power.
In what time frame?
So we're talking about the medieval time period.
Sorry, my stomach hurts.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, so after the fall of the Roman Empire, mm-hmm. and you get the Holy Roman Empire, and you had all of these kingdoms like France and Germany and even the Byzantine Empire. Well, no, not that they were okay. Anyways, Italy, whatever, Rome itself, all had to pay fealty and get approved to do things through the Roman Catholic Church. So they were very much a political power, and it started when it sort of started when Constantine legalized Christianity. He was very concerned about the unity of his empire, mm-hmm. and he knew that Christians made up a big part of his empire. So that's why he and the Christian church was dealing with the Arian controversy. Mm-hmm. at that time. So that's why he created the council. But then, he also had theological advisors who were in his ear, and he had other Christians in his ear, and he gave them political power. And then when Christianity was made into the official religion of the Roman Empire, a lot of Christians started gaining like super amounts of influence politically, and it controlled a lot of land. Like the church owned so much land, and I think it was gosh, why am I blanking on his name right now? Not Saint Francis. Goodness gracious. I don't. Very, very important.
It's late. So
medieval, very important medieval monk whose name escapes me right now, even though he was super important. He goes up, he interacts with this priest. He said, hey, the priest says he's counting gold and silver. He says, the church can't say anymore that gold and silver had I not. And the monk says, yeah, but now we can't say, get up and walk either. Okay. So the church became very political, and that's why we had the Reformation and other things. It was a global superpower for over 1,000 years.
Right. And that's kind of my point, is that that's not the end goal.
Right.
The end goal is not for us to be in power.
Yeah.
And I think you really do see that in like a lot of the writings of Paul, but he even said, pray for those in authority, you know, but that we might live quiet, peaceable lives. So I guess one of the questions or maybe statements I'm trying to get to is like, how are we as the church, as believers, supposed to act in a government system? Well, a bigger question is, what government system are we talking about? You know, when in first century, when a lot of these things were being written, there was not a representative government. It was a total dictatorship, essentially. What would you call the Roman Empire?
I mean, they had a Senate. Okay, so they had somewhat of a representative government.
Okay.
However, Caesar was the emperor, so he had pretty much total authority. Final say. Yeah, he had pretty much all authority.
Right. So when Emperor Nero was murdering Christians and all of that, what power did they have?
They didn't have any.
But here in this country, this is a representative democracy.
Right.
I think the church needs to be vocal, needs to be involved. I think that's just being a good citizen, I suppose. That's just, like I was talking about, like the importance of a strong economy. You can see that, and I think people might criticize and say, oh, it's all about money. Well, it's power. You know, we're not going to be able to send out missionaries if we're broke, if we're hurting just like the rest of the world. You can really only help someone from a position of strength. So it's important that we have a strong economy. It's important that we know what's happening with the school boards, like you were talking about. That's one thing I do like about Eric Erickson, is that he's really like locally focused.
Yeah.
He keeps an eye on DC, but anytime somebody calls him and asks, what can I do? He's like, go to my website. There's a whole list of your local representatives. Like, hound them, jump on them, see what they think about it. Like when I first moved to Georgia, I was like, it was the primary for the gubernatorial race. And so like I was in this place for like a short period of time, 6 months. And I was already like looking, okay, who's Hunter Hill? Who's Kemp was Secretary of State at that time. And I was instantly like, okay, I'm going to be a part of this, not because that's the last bastion, or not because this is the most important thing, but I think it's important for the church to be involved in some sense in local government. I'd love to see more born again, spirit-filled believers on school boards, a part of the decision making. So I guess I'm saying this because I can hear people saying like, well, this is political. You're getting political. You sound like you're a right-wing commentator. And that may be true, but it's coming from a biblical worldview. The idea that like I want to live a quiet, peaceable life. I want the good of the land that I'm at, which he even says in
it's Jeremiah.
Thank you, Jeremiah, referring to like the Babylonian exile. So it's like you should seek the good of where you're at, and we're blessed to be able to say that we have a say and we have a voice. So what I kind of wanted to focus on, referring to the church, where are you at on time?
I'm good. Well, we're at 10. We're at 10 past 10.
Okay.
So, but I don't have a time limit.
So, I think it's an important thing to try to figure out how influential should the church be in being in the world, but not being corrupted by it, not wanting power, not wanting to be able to lord it over people.
Yeah.
But so one of the main criticisms that I have, going back to Sean Foyt, the thing that kicked all of this off, he's someone who saw all the restrictions in place that our authoritarian governors who are there to serve the people, he saw them as being totally out of line with these like made up laws. Like, we're going to shut down. You're not allowed to leave your house. You're not allowed to do this. And it's like, you don't have the authority to do that. I love that. I'm not talking about the first 2 weeks. I mean, like anything after that, anything that just became like
after we flattened the curve.
Yeah. Which is apparently still a curve. I don't know.
No, Biden declared the pandemic to be over.
Oh, good.
Yesterday.
So we're all Neanderthals now.
Right.
All right. So the idea that they were using power that they didn't have, it was not in their job title to be able to tell people, like Newsom closed the beaches, outside in the open air. And he said strip clubs, it can be open. Alcohol, you can buy alcohol from these establishments. You're essential, but the church is not essential. And overall, the church said, okay, that's fine. We'll just be online. And it really seemed, I didn't see it at the time, to be honest. It wasn't clear to me. As soon as I heard that argument, I was like, oh yeah, they can't say that, can they? I'm happy that someone that was strong and bold and willing to take all sorts of heat and willing to take all sorts of hits, like stood up and said, we're not going to close. John MacArthur being one of those, Bodie Bachman being one of those, Sean Foyt being one of those. And there's many more. The guy in Tampa, I think it was Tampa, who got put in jail. Person in Canada, who kept getting put in jail.
Yeah.
I think that's so important. And what did I see in that time? I saw the church ripping this guy apart, and you can say, I don't like Sean Foyt. I don't care. I'm not trying to get everyone to like everyone, but I wanted to see, I agree with what you're doing. And a good example of that is John MacArthur. I loved his responses. I love the man's courage. I love that he stood up and said what he said and continued to have church in the middle of it. But to be honest, I don't like John MacArthur.
Right.
He really seems very Calvinist to me, and I could go off.
It's because he is.
Okay, well, there you go. You can tell my ignorance on what everyone believes. But so I disagree with him probably about everything else. But I totally agree with him about that. That's a symbol of unity, I think. That's an example of unity, is that for the time being, I'm forgetting about everything else I disagree with, but I'm focusing in on what you're doing, and I love it. And so what I saw was tons of people in the church just constantly criticizing Foyt, and you don't need to do this. And he said something that I thought was worth repeating. He said, people will look back at 2020 and remember it as a time of isolation and depression, where you didn't have money, and the government would not allow you to work, which is disgusting to me. I hate that. And it's a lot of people will remember it as my friend killed himself because he lost hope, and it's a painful time to remember. He said, but my kids remember 2020 as a time of revival. We saw revival. We saw people get free from drug addiction. We gave people hope. We were about worshiping God together. And I think that's worth like the support. You don't have to be at the let us worship thing. You don't have to give them money, but give them support. And all I saw was everyone just nitpicking, Just
Yeah.
nitpicking well, he shouldn't have said that. Well, I don't like that he did this. Well, and I'm like, but you're not looking at all this other stuff over here.
Yes.
Like what the devil is doing, stealing people's hope and joy. And, I made the Neanderthal joke because that was what Biden said. Neanderthals. Last time I checked, hide in caves, but
right. And it's pronounced Neanderthal. No. That's a joke. That's a joke for Anna. That's for my wife.
I thought you were just criticizing.
No. But yeah, so I was very depressed during the pandemic. Like I came close to a mental breakdown. So we had some issues that had nothing to do with pandemic going on at our church, but it was. I see your point. I definitely see your point. And I'm a guy who is all about the unity. Like of the church. I used to write a theology of the church based on John 17. But I was never good at applying it, the unity, because I am one of those people who nitpick. I'm always analyzing everything. It's part of my brain, and and it's not necessarily a calling to do that. That's just what I do. I don't know why.
I don't think analyzing is bad.
No, it's not. It's not bad, but if you do it to the extreme, like I can do sometimes, like I get into arguments with my wife all the time about just one of the things that we're just discussing, air quotes, right now is is not finding a local church to go to, because I always somehow bring up something that I don't like, and she's worried that that we're not just going to be able to find a church because I'm always finding something wrong. And I don't mean to do that. And I'm not saying that any of those things are a deal breaker in any way. But if you're not like me, okay, and you're constantly hearing someone like me nitpicking, you're going to wonder, do you actually want unity?
Right.
Have you read the Bible, actually? That, I reserve that criticism sometimes for, Christians in politics who are like Reverend Lovejoy's wife, always clutching at the pearls. I'm like, have you read the Bible? Yeah. But no, you can also apply it to me. And like, how can you write about unity if you're not applying it or practicing it?
Well, because it sounds good.
It's because it makes you sound smart.
Right. I think that's,
So, we're not going to be like what atheists say we are. Okay. We're going to sound smart and write scholarly books and then not write for the laity who really needs those books to be written to them. So,
yeah. And I totally hear you, because it is easy to get over. Maybe it's easy to get over into cynicism. Pastor Jeremy, my pastor, has said many times, there's a difference between a critical spirit and a critical heart. No, I said that wrong. Critical eye and a critical heart. Okay. Yeah. So he's saying a critical eye can see things you don't agree with, see what needs to be fixed. I don't like this. Worship wasn't great. The pastor kind of rambled. It's just little things you can fix, tighten up, excellence, or even like we talked about before, and I won't get deep into this because I love my pastor. But like, there's things we disagree about, things I think are really important. And I'm like, I get passionate, but I've told him about it. We've argued, and in a good way. He was respectful,
of course.
But like, I feel like if I tell people who are on like maybe the same boat as I am what I disagree with my pastor about, they'd probably be like, that's a deal breaker. And I'd be like, I agree, but I'm led by the Holy Spirit, and this is where we're supposed to be.
Right.
So I'm supporting him, but I disagree with that. But it's easy to say, yeah, we need unity. And then, why are you criticizing everybody? Like
Yeah.
everybody, and you're not criticizing anyone. And not calling out the lies, not just from the left, but I mean from evil people, no matter what political party, like calling out hypocrisy anywhere.
Yeah.
But if it's only reserved for the church, like we have people that you and I both know, other people I know from back home. I've unfollowed and unfriended so many people on Facebook for this reason. They just constantly criticize the church and criticize the right and Trump, and I look at their page and I'm just kind of perusing, but I'm like, wow, nothing against the world, nothing against the Democrat Party. Like, they're not doing anything wrong. So I'm like, you hate the church. It's what I have to come to in my mind, even though it's not true, because I got into trouble and I had to call a mutual friend and apologize because I do know that he loves the church, but it was just the perception that I started to get. I started to get a perception that it was just like, okay,
and that's,
whose side are you on?
Yeah. Well, and that to me was another side effect of the pandemic. It's because we lived on social media and you're not interacting with each other at all. And, I write in my book that you forget how to be human when you're not interacting with people.
Sure.
Only when you're with your community do you remember how to be human. So
yeah, because it's easy for me to call you out and say, you're not doing this right. This is bad. You don't need to be doing this. Whereas if you're face to face with me, I'm going to put a little more sugar on that.
Yeah, but also you have a relationship, you know that person and you want to keep that relationship. And so it's not just that you're putting sugar on it, you're respecting that person. And for me, social media became this thing where respect went out the window, and finding and just trying to get at the truth of things, trying to get at the heart of things. Like the heart doesn't exist anymore, it seems like.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
and it's easy to get to that place when everything becomes political, and we always make the joke that social media has made us less social.
Yes,
and it's true. But it is kind of funny. It's like, I thought that was supposed to connect us.
Right.
Why do I hate everybody? No, I think it kind of comes back to that concentric circles. If you're outside of my concentric circle, I probably will say something on social media, but I wonder why I always feel the need to do that. Because I'm like, I'm not going to call you. We're probably not going to talk to each other. Could we? Yeah, but I haven't talked to you in 15 years, But at the same time, I always feel like I want to be the one to represent the church. So when I see everyone criticizing, I want to say something and say, that seems like a leftist talking point. And that kind of brings me to the idea. I made some notes. This was a while ago, but when we're talking about speech, talking about the difference between our culture and what the church needs to be, I want the church to be a lighthouse for the world's craziness.
Okay, yeah.
I want people to be able, whether you're a believer or not, to be able to see that it's like, it seems like the church doesn't just yell and scream like we do. It seems like they're doing so much stuff, and they're not about constantly engaging in this back and forth yelling thing, that it's just like, okay, I think we disagree, but here's what we're for. Not so much here's what we're against, here's what we're for. Here's what the church is building. And I feel like I can tell that a church or a believer is influenced by the world when by the way they talk, by certain buzzwords that are really popular now. And we talked about one of them before, and it's the phrase, one of them is racial reconciliation. When I hear that, I'm like, I've never heard anyone say that. That's a believer that it did not originate from. I mean, I feel like that's one of those things.
The first person I heard it from was a believer. He said, and he was a black pastor. I don't know where he was from. He's like, We don't talk about reconciliation in the church. And after he said that, it blew up. Okay.
I wonder if that was the same guy that I heard.
I don't know. And I'd never heard of him before, and I still don't know who it is. So I think he was just this pastor.
If he was out of Atlanta, that's the guy I'm thinking of.
I don't know. I feel like it was a major city. I don't know if it was here or Chicago or something like that. And so he said, and this was in like, this was pre a lot of bad stuff. Like this was pre social justice movement stuff.
Oh, there's another one.
Okay, so
another.
No, I mean like Black Lives Matter and things like that.
I know what you mean. I just mean that phrase specifically.
Yeah, but and so he did mean it ethnically, but he also meant it theologically. So he said that the church in the United States doesn't place a lot of emphasis on reconciliation, and he had his context for that, both relationally and spiritually. So
I understand what you mean when you say relationally.
Relationally, like so reconciliation as salvation being reconciled back to God. He was saying at that point, this was like 10 years ago or something like that. The church had not been very visible church had not been placing a lot of priority on emphasizing that theologically. But he also said that plays into ethnic reconciliation, because that the Bible, that verse in 2 Corinthians 5, it does speak to interpersonal reconciliation after or maybe even before spiritual reconciliation with God. And so so what I'm saying is that's the first place that I've heard about racial reconciliation.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. But as soon as I heard reconciliation, my mind went to 2 Corinthians 5.
Yeah.
We are called to reconcile the world unto God, just as Christ was in God reconciling the world to himself. So yes, we're called to that. But like, one has to inform the other. And actually, I don't even like the focus on that. Like I was saying before about the interview that I heard, maybe the same guy. It was one of his big things in church was like, we're here to reconcile the races. And he said the whole reason we joined the Hillsong name was because it's a trusted name with white people. And we didn't just want to have, and I was like, you get out of here, man. You're constantly focusing on race. I hate it. The focus has got to be on Christ, But anyway, when I hear things like that, and I'm not, I guess one of my things that I do is that when I hear something new like that, like I did in the conversation, I just ask, like, what does that mean? What do you mean? Like this? Like that doesn't make any sense, And like social justice, and when I hear like social justice warrior, I cringe every time. I'm just like, that's the last thing. You know what we need? More plumbers. Not activists. We need more like workers. More apprentice. But what was another one? Women's reproductive health care. You see how the world changes and corrupts these words? The church has got to be a lighthouse to say, I'm not playing that game. I'm not playing your little lingo game. I'm calling sin, and I'm calling an abortion. I think even the word abortion is kind of cleaning it up, because as soon as you explain to someone what an abortion is, it's like, that sounds like we're canceling this. Canceling what? A human? Okay, that sounds like Nazism to me. If we're having debates on what's a human, we're kind of flirting with Nazism, So as soon as I think in the past few years, that's when I started hearing women's reproductive health care.
Of course.
But they have sneakily removed, if sneakily is a word, they have removed the word reproductive. And then it's like conservatives are against women's health care.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have never heard one story about a woman kicked out of a hospital because she had female genitalia.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, get out of here with your breasts. We're not going to help you with your heart attack, you woman.
Yeah.
It's like, are we talking about the Taliban or are we talking about the United States of America?
Mm-hmm.
Stop playing these little games. And I don't like it when believers do it, you know? There's just certain like little phrases. I feel like that seems like it's world influence. The word equity as well, or fairness. As soon as politicians start talking about fairness, it's like, oh, please don't. I don't want to hear what your definition of fair is.
Yeah.
You know, because what's fair to me is not fair to you. You know, I don't like it. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's kind of what I mean about the church being a lighthouse, is that like we speak a different language. And you alluded to this, how you don't mind Christianese. Mm-hmm. And I loved your point about that we should be speaking a different language. And like when the left or the culture talks about love, that's not love.
Right.
That's not love. So we have to come up with some definitions just based on the word of what love is, some examples. And there has to be a sharp contrast between our culture and the church. Really, a really sharp contrast. And when I see it get hazy, I start to get really mad.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, why do you want to be like them? You know?
Yes.
Like their idea of truth is sick. And as I just see our culture just going down a radical standpoint, and I see our church just kind of tolerating it. Mm-hmm. And just like, okay, we'll say that. We'll believe that. We'll go there. It's like, that's why I like people like, I don't know, go over the whole names again. Sean Foyt. That's why I like people like him, who's just like, no, we are not okay with this. And we're going to let them know. We're going to civil disobedience, telling us to stay home. No, we're not going to, you know?
Yeah.
And I would like to see more like support, you know,
okay.
in that regard.
Yeah. I get it. In the whole love is love thing. And the strong definitions of love, like the Bible gives those, and it gives those through the Greek language.
For sure. Agape and phileo.
And so we, as the church, the way that we can make those strong distinctions is to teach the people about those.
Yeah.
So that they can have the knowledge of what love is, and also that God's love is holy, you know, set apart from the world. He's other. Okay, so his love is not going to be anything like what we say the definition of love is. The world does not have a definition of love. It's so vague and ambiguous, and then it changes with whatever situation you're in. And it's weak and like muley. Is that an adjective? It's just kind of like meh.
Yeah.
You know, it is what I say it is.
Exactly. And it changes all the time.
And so that's not a force of nature. That's not love.
Right.
It's you know, whatever fits the moment.
Yeah.
It's like the worst stereotype of pragmatism, where the truth is what works at the time. And so yes, we need strong distinctions, and you know, it goes back to the Bible. It goes back to the word. Yep.
Yep. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm just looking at my notes here just to make sure I got most of what I wanted to say. So I know it is getting late. Yeah. You might have to edit this, Tim. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I wrote down an unbeliever needs to see the church calling out ungodliness in the church and out of the church. calling it ungodliness, period.
So that's another. I think people want to see the church do that.
Yeah.
Because you do have the poor in spirit out there who are just like aching for clarity and for to know that yes, there is a right and wrong, that because it's just weird that the world, the society as we know it here in the United States, or progressivism, whatever you want to call it, places so much emphasis on freedom, but this freedom is like it's spiritually and psychologically oppressive. And so people are just like, they've got that God-shaped hole in them, and they want to know. They're deeply yearning for something more clear, and the church, it's our mission to bring that clarity. I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just as you've said that, be the light.
Yeah.
And I think one of the people that I see this the most in, as far as wanting this clarity, and somebody who's fed up with a lot of this stuff, is people like my oldest son. He does profess to be a Christian, but he doesn't, I love him, but I don't know if he's I don't know how much of it is like he's very new. Okay. But even before that, he would say to me, all I see is like, all the pride, this, pride, that, and, all of these people on TV pushing this, that. It's so annoying. And like, he's somebody that can't stand church.
Right.
Like, church is boring to him.
Okay.
But, and I have never, and I might be a bad father for this, but I've never pushed like Christian morals on him the way that I teach them to my other children.
Okay.
To my children with Anna. Like, he's grown up with being a child of a broken home,
right,
sort of situation. So I've never like pressured him to be in the church that much, or I've never pressured him. I've never like pressed my faith upon him. But like, organically, he sees the stuff and he's annoyed by it, and he's sick and tired of it. And like, it's not my influence. I don't know what it is. Maybe it is my like general influence or whatever, but I don't go out of my way to bash LGBTQ stuff in my home. He just, it's saturated the culture so much that he's just annoyed by it.
Yeah, for sure.
And so people like
really,
him.
Really smart, man, for being that age and being able to recognize that.
Yeah. He is very smart. No, he is very intelligent. He's very emotionally intelligent as well. So, I think there's more people out there like him who either don't have a faith background or whose parents do, but who've never pressed them to do more with it, who are just as annoyed to have this stuff. So I haven't pushed anything on him, but the world has pushed stuff on him and other people like him, and they're just they can't stand it.
And that's kind of what I see maybe with Gen Z. I feel like, and this is just what I'm seeing, so I might find some truth in it, but I feel like my generation, technically I'm a millennial, probably on the higher end of the millennial, but I feel like I remember it just being like, I want to have fun. Not just me, I just mean like all my friends, and what I saw in the culture was just like, do what you want, have fun, go crazy, sleep around.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. and it's like live crazy. And I feel like Gen Z, and this is crazy to me, but I feel like I'm seeing them like looking at all of the millennials and being like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. That's not smart.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to have a child out of wedlock because I've seen what happens, you know,
Right.
or I'm not, you don't want to sleep around with everybody and you're going to have STDs, AIDS. Does any of that mean anything to you?
Right.
And it's like, I've heard that like, what's that guy? Simonek or something like that. Simon Simonek.
Oh, Simon Sinek. Yeah.
Sinek. There you go. Okay. So he talks about that, the difference between like millennial and Gen Z. One of the things he says is that millennials are like fast, like I want to make this much now. And Gen Z are really smart about choosing their careers.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like they look at it and they're like, well, I want to be in a company that's well established that I can get healthcare and benefits from. And I'm like, how old are you? That's really smart, you know? And so I see that and I can't help but think that when our culture becomes so corrupt and so sexualized about everything that it appeals to one generation and then maybe the next generation starts to say, maybe like generations ago had it right. Maybe conservatism, you know, like getting married to one woman and not sleeping around before you get married and having kids. And maybe that's what, like, I feel like Gen Z, it seems like there's kind of a desire and a hunger for what previous generations have done that worked, you know, like they seem like they're a little more like religiously conscious than maybe the millennials are. It seems like you see them really digging into theology a little bit more. And maybe that's just my perspective, but I feel like I see it a lot. Like younger people just appreciating when millennials are like, get your religion out of my face. Or like even Gen X, like, I'm not going to be my father. I'm bucking the system. Yes. And I feel like Gen Z, it seems like, obviously there's tons of exceptions, but I mean, like as a whole, it seems like they're like really interested in finding God or finding what their ancestors years ago, a more simple life, not all this debt, not big cars, big house, excess. It seems like they're going a little more simple, you know? Do you see that, or am I? When you said that about your son, that's what made me think of it.
I mean, I've heard that Gen Z is a lot more conscious about that stuff, but I had trouble seeing it. I read an article about that. I'm like, you're full of crap, article.
Well, I mean, kids are kids, so you're right, gonna see tons of.
So, but I do wonder, like, if the excess that everybody is pushing and offering is just gonna be, they're like the downfall of that excess, you know, because people are like, I think like Gen Z could see right through it. Like, and I mean, I think I see that happening with my son. But I haven't seen it with too many other Gen Z kids. I mean, we talk, if we're going to talk about in the church, we talk a lot about deconstruction, like deconstructing your faith. Yeah. But then I do see a lot of younger kids like start to pick up a lot of the early church theology and just getting back to like rethinking the basics, like and getting back to, okay, what did the first church believe and how were these ideas developed throughout the centuries, rather than you know, what evangelicals were known for is like, again, like millennials bucking the system. They're saying, no, you can have a spiritually rich faith in this theology without being dead, you know, going to a dead church. And so I do see something like that, but as far as culture goes, I don't know yet. I don't know. I hope that you know, they are like we say they are, where they can see through our bull crap. and reject that stuff, but we need them to if we want to see things get better.
Right.
So
yeah, and I really do. I've heard this a lot. I feel like Gen Z has a real destiny. Like God has such a destiny for them, and I think that's the reason why they're coming under so much attack. That's why it's like, let's confuse them about gender. Let's get them to transition and question everything and have no real idea of what truth is, which is going back to the idea that like the church has got to be so firm and so stubborn and so fixed about what truth is, what life is, or what light is, what life with God is like. And we don't talk the way the world does. We don't run our money the way the world does. We reject everything in the culture because we know what works. It's worked for hundreds of years, and this is what we're doing, you know? And yeah, I think that's what we need. And that's I feel like that's always what I come back to, you know? But I like when we're talking about culture wars and things like that, that always comes back to me. Not that we'll regain the House and regain Senate. I have no hope for that. Do I think it's going to happen? Yeah, I do actually, but that's not like what I'm waiting for. In November, everything is going to be made right. I'm like, no, that's not true at all. You know, I want to see the church look more like Christ. I want to see, which sounds, you know, obviously so cliche, but I want to see the church have influence in the culture. Like have a really good influence in the culture. And one of the ways, it's late, so we don't have to get into that. But one of the things that I'd mentioned this briefly about the idea of, we know so much what churches are against, but we really need to know what they're for. And when I'm talking about culture, what I would love to see is like is what I see happening in the Daily Wire. Okay. Do you know much about the Daily Wire and what the...
I only know that Ben Shapiro started the Daily Wire.
Yeah, well, he's one of them, but Jeremy Boring was the other guy. But what I see them doing, like in the political sphere, I would like to see the church do something like this. And that is, we talked about this before about Harry's Razors. They started their own razor company in contrast to that. And then they make the joke, like we have our own publishing company. We have our own printing press, you know. We're making movies right now because we see what Hollywood is doing, and we are sharply rejecting that. And instead of going groveling and saying, "Please give us money to make a movie," okay, we'll put your parameters in place. We'll operate on your parameters. Just please, we want to make this movie. Instead of doing that, saying we're going to make our own movies, you know. So what I'd like to see, and look, those are conservative guys. They're in the political sphere. They make no bones about it. But what I'd like to see is the church do a lot more of that. And yet, are there Christian movies? Yes. I'd rather not comment publicly on what I think about those Christian movies, but at least I'll say that, like, I'm happy they're at least doing it. I'm happy they're like flexing those creative muscles.
And I think if Christians want to see better Christian movies, then support them financially.
For sure. Or find someone who writes a really good script and hires good actors.
Yeah, well, I mean, that all comes from budget.
For sure.
Because, you know, so there's the Kendrick brothers.
Yeah.
They make I think that they write good scripts. The problem is like Kirk Cameron's in like all 40 million of them.
For sure, Kevin Sorbo.
Or Kevin Sorbo, yeah. Right. So, and you know, I'm not saying that they're bad by any means, but it's just like
such a limited scope.
Yeah, we need a bigger pool of actors.
Well, okay, yes, absolutely. But it's also like, do you have to make Christian movies, or can you make great movies?
Right. Yeah. Okay.
And you're a believer. You know, it's like the thing I hear all the time is people say, like, I make good movies and I happen to be a believer. It's not a side note, but it doesn't have to be a Christian movie. Like, I just want a good movie, a really good story that does have a biblical worldview behind it.
There is a director like that who's European. He directed I think it's called A Quiet Life or something like that, about a German guy who didn't want to join the Nazi army based on his faith. And he's got 2 other movies.
Yeah.
Although one incorporate some evolution stuff. But he's European and a Christian, so
yeah,
they've got some different beliefs, but they're really good movies.
Yeah.
But he's like kind of the only one
Uh-huh.
making these good movies.
Right. And so that kind of begs the question, are we not seeing more of that because there is a philosophy of like, let's be in the world but not of the world, or like, I don't know. I just would like to see more of that.
From what I've seen, from what I saw of his movies, like he's a sneaky guy. And that movie, that Quiet Life movie, came out during like the Trump administration, so people were like, yeah, this is, they equated Trump with like Hitler anyway.
Right.
So.
And I think that's another point that I forgot that I wanted to get to. And this is just like a point. We don't have to belabor this, but it's the idea that I feel like people are so afraid to be lumped in as one of those.
Yeah.
And maybe I did say that, I don't remember, but that we have got to get over that.
Uh-huh.
We have to get over that.
Right.
It cannot matter. And maybe I'm speaking more to like the intellectual believers or the people who, like I said, a little more progressive, but Christians, it seems like you really want to stand out and show all your friends, like, I'm not one of those. I'm like really smart. Watch, I'll criticize Trump all the time.
Right.
Like the left will be like, you need to criticize. Okay. Yeah. You're not getting your marching orders from them. You're getting your marching orders from God, from the word of God. Mm-hmm. And it's like, we have to just get over that. Like, okay, call me names, call me whatever. But like, I'm about making this. I'm about saying this. I'm about the kingdom of God. And here's the thing, you're going to come under criticism.
Yeah.
If they hated Jesus, they will hate you. Mm-hmm. A servant is not greater than his master. So they're going to hate you. They're going to call you all sorts of things. But we really have to not seek the approval of the world. Not seek the approval of the culture, only seek the approval of God. And it's easier said than done, but it's really important. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to be about making great things. If we really are made in the image of God and God created the literal universe, we have some crazy creativity in the church we are not tapping into. Mm-hmm. So I make the joke, and I hesitate to say this because I don't want to sound like I'm criticizing the church, but like, I don't like Christian radio. I don't. I think it's not good. Yeah. Okay. Good for you. You're making music. I'm happy, but it's like, what do I gravitate towards? Like worship, like Hillsong, like Bethel, like Jesus Culture, like Planet Shakers. And we're so unbelievably blessed to be alive at this time. We have the greatest worship and it's so great. Mm-hmm. But like, there are also Christian artists who are good, but I can't help but think like, why don't I like Christian movies? Why don't I like Christian music? Why are there so many things that's like, I don't know. It reminds me of being in Christian school and getting the sheet of paper that's like, if you like Dave Matthews, you'll like Stephen Curtis Chapman. And I'm like, not a comparison. If you like AC/DC, you'll like Stryper.
If you like Linkin Park, you'll love Lauren Daigle.
Right, there you go. Or it's like Skillet. If you like Linkin Park, you'll like Skillet. Right. And it's just like, stop. I understand what they're trying to do. It's probably really good intention. And like I said, I'm not trying to just be critical. I can't help but laugh about some of that. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, there's so much creativity. We're not tapping into it. But we are. I am starting to see a lot of people do that. I'm starting to see a lot of worship people push those boundaries. And it's like we're not competing with the world. We're creating.
Yeah.
Don't worry about what they're doing. We're creating. Be creative,
Yeah. And I think people, ministries like the Bible Project have been doing that for a while. Point. So,
and that's a really good point because it seems like they're making a Jesus movie, which almost seems like it's going against what I just said. The idea that it doesn't have to just be in the Christian sphere, but it's the best one I've ever seen. It's just good.
Yeah.
Right. But anyway, sorry.
No. And so to your point about why you don't like Christian media, I think it's because it's, for one, it's overproduced. Like it's okay. It's like if you listen to a Toby Mac song or
Toby Mac's got some bangers now.
Not Toby Mac, but just like some general like stuff that you would hear on K-Love or The Fish or whatever. It's overproduced, and it's like, for it to be Christian, it has to be family friendly. Like it's still,
that's a good point.
It can't be Christian unless it's family friendly or something. But it has to be wholesome, like this weird, like what's that John Boy show, like Walton's Mountain, like overly wholesome, but there's no character in it whatsoever.
And that's a category. That's a category of music that I'm not even trying to trash. Wholesome, good. Listen to the Carpenters.
Yeah,
that's fine. Actually, I dig the Carpenters. But
she was a good drummer. I had no idea Karen Carpenter was a drummer.
I probably should know that, since like my wife's family's all about the Carpenters. Even her voice and their musical arrangements is amazing. But my point is like that's a category. That's fine. But I don't know if you remember like when POD and Project 86 and like actually really good like rock. What would you even call that?
There's new metal.
I felt funny saying rock and roll. I'm like, what am I talking about, Elvis? Anyway, like music that certainly pushed that Christian boundary. Like you see some guys from SoCal who were tatted up and look like they're a part of a gang. You know, the K-Love probably frowns upon that. Yes. And my friends would call radio stations, Christian radio stations, just be like, can I please hear POD Southtown? Like, that's a famous one. Like, that's good. And they'd be like, no, that's on our watch list. I'm like, nope, that's not on our list. And it's like, that's the problem. Sometimes really creative things do push boundaries. They put in they but boy, I'm sorry, and people might disagree with me, but I loved POD.
Dude, I was a huge
really
POD
good.
fan. Yeah.
They were really good. And one of their songs was about partying, which is like, whoa. Yeah. We don't do that.
Christians don't party,
right. Yeah. And so I feel like it's probably there, but it's also stifled. So we have to find people who are like entrepreneurs who are willing to break that mold. And like I said, I'm not saying like it doesn't exist. It does. We're starting to see it, but I hope we're about to see a lot of really good media, good movies, good scripts come across, like not just good scripts, but production companies, whole new production companies, like Amblin Entertainment is Steven Spielberg. Yeah. That didn't exist until he created it. Right. You know? So I don't want to go to establishments and create in their boundaries. I would love to see believers start their own production companies and really just say, it doesn't have to be about Jesus. Just give me a good story, a really good, compelling story, science fiction, whatever. I don't care. But like, that's what I would like to see more of, and more businesses who are, and not even just in the media outlet, things that influence the culture. You know, I would love to see cities where like believers own hotels and create things that I and you don't even know exist. But to see it really created where like the world and the culture takes a peek and says, that's good.
You sound like a post-millennialist.
I don't know what that means.
It's the belief that when Christ returns, he'll come to a mostly Christian world. So, but no, I agree. I like all that stuff, and that's something that I wish, man, I wish people would take more seriously, because the state of Christian media and Christian art is lacking, and we can't just have the Bible Project. I haven't seen much of The Chosen, but what I have seen, I've liked.
It's good. Yeah. It's actually really good.
There was one episode where it was Jesus with the children, and he was teaching them how to make stuff. I thought that was a great episode. But that's the only one I've ever seen.
Yeah, I know someone who's like seen everything. I'm on season 2, but I don't watch a whole lot of stuff, period. Right. But yeah, it's good.
And then, and the same thing with the music, like, so rock music in general has just taken its popularity has taken a nosedive. Like every rock station that I have loved and listened to gets a format change into like Justin Bieber stuff.
Okay.
You just can't hold on to a good one anymore.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of these Christian entertainment companies are, just taking a lot of cues from the culture.
Right.
So
yeah.
And that's the thing.
And here's the thing. And I'm an entrepreneur. I don't claim. And here's the thing. I own one business. So an entrepreneur owns a lot and does a lot. But I feel like I'm really an entrepreneur because there's a million other things I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not like pie in the sky, just like, I want to join the NBA one day. I mean, like legitimately, one of the things I would love to do. I'm not even a big music guy, but the music I do know, I feel like I have really good taste.
Mm-hmm.
So like I just want to see hear a really good radio station that doesn't play the hits.
Right.
Or it's like, there's a lot of music from the 60s and 70s I really love.
Mm-hmm.
I really love that era. Even like, no, that's probably right. 56, not 50s, 60s, 70s, some 80s. But like songs you don't hear, not the hits from that band, but like a really good song that often gets overlooked.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's like that, but on a Christian radio station. That's what I would love to see. And that's not only what I would love to see, I want to do that. And because, like you said, it gets overproduced. So like, I'm trying to remember which song it is. There was a famous song. It was like, it may have been Southtown. POD maybe did get on the radio with the song Southtown. But like, if you buy the CD and listen to it, it's raw, it's rough, it has a real I'm not a music guy.
So they'll do the radio edit.
Yeah. Uh-huh. I hate that.
Yes, me too.
And it's like you see that with Christian radio stations. Like, we're gonna neuter this song, but we'll let the kids listen to it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, and not just Southtown. Play all the other really good songs.
Right. There was this made me so mad. So Need to Breathe.
Oh, there you go. That's a good band.
And Gavin DeGraw did a song together
called that song.
Brother.
Yeah.
Okay. So the regular secular radio stations played the version with both of them in it. The Fish took out Gavin DeGraw altogether and just had the need to breathe.
Because he's not a born again spiritual
Christian. Right. Yeah. And I was so mad. I'm like, this is sanctimonious, self-righteous bullcrap.
It is.
And it's just like, so it's like the bubble. Like, it's just the bubble of like, we're going to be, I don't like a Norman Rockwell painting, Thanksgiving dinner, 24/7.
But that's the thing. If you want a Norman Rockwell radio station, you should have that. Mm-hmm. But there's got to be a radio station with some courage.
Yes.
Who can just play good music and say, if you don't like it, if you're offended, go listen to The Fish. And speaking of K-Love and The Fish, I want to punch them in the face. Here's the thing. Sean Foyt released a song after Roe versus Wade was overturned. Uh-huh. And it was about life. Mm-hmm. And they will not play it. I'm dead serious.
Really?
And you listen to it. It's not like he doesn't say abortion's murder and everyone who has is going to hell.
Yeah.
It's like the most nice, good song. Like, you should listen to it. It's actually really good. But it's just a celebration of life. Mm-hmm. And like, we as a church should celebrate the fact that Roe versus Wade was overturned.
Yeah.
But a lot of times I hear believers just being like, well, there's a lot of people who are upset. Let them be upset. I'm not here to make them happy. I'm happy that we finally did something monumental to establish we are for life. I'm going to celebrate. Call me whatever, but I think we all need to. And I think that K-Love and The Fish are a bunch of cowards for not playing. That's just sheer cowardice, man. I can't stand it.
Yeah, that I'm surprised because I'm not that surprised because, like, again, they're like that bubbled in Norman Rockwell. Like, we're non-confrontational.
Oh, dude.
So it's like grocery.
Never be offended.
No, you won't. It's like the grocery store. When you go in the grocery store, they're playing all the soft rock hits, right? Non-confrontational music.
Yeah.
And so
but it's not pushing the creative boundaries. No. And the morning shows Kevin and Jill, they suck.
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry. I've never heard a good radio station personality. Oh, Justin, my brother Justin, I'm speaking to you right now. You'll remember this. Do you remember Mike at the mic in the morning? That guy was funny. Do you?
I think so, yeah.
I don't know if it was national or if it was just Rockford, but this guy was hysterical. But anyway, I thought that would be fun to listen to it and hear your name. So I thought I'd send you a shout out. But I've never heard a like nationally syndicated radio Christian station where it's like, oh, I like the morning show. They're funny. No, they're not. They're boring. If I was like 50 and lame, I'm sorry to all the 50 lamers out there, if you're offended, I would probably think it's great, but I'm listening to it and I'm like, you're laughing, but what you said wasn't funny. And that sounded like a fake laugh. And everything, I'm like, this is fake chemistry. This is all trash. And I'm like, I just want to hear some genuinely funny people in the morning, some good joke writers, not Christian joke writers, just joke writers.
Right.
You don't have to be a stand-up comedian and say offensive things. I just mean you're not interesting. I feel like the culture as a whole looks at Christianity and you're like, yeah, you're not interesting. You don't make good movies. You don't make good music. Yeah, we're good. We'll pass.
Yeah. It's like, so Christian entertainment it has become Ned Flanders. So, yes, indeedly doodly.
Yeah.
Right. But man, maybe we should end it there because it's
late
past my bedtime. So, but
I was ready to close it a while ago. We started talking about this, and I got all pumped up.
Yeah, I mean, I feel you, dog.
Yeah, for sure.
But all right, well, thank you for tuning in, and until next time, God bless and keep learning.